And away we go on a Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Happiness is a choice. Thank you for choosing us. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. I am Ari Temkin. Great to have you with us today and every day here in your home for the Big 12 Conference. Big 12 Radio on TuneIn and streaming live at Big 12 Studios. You can find out where you can stream us live via Big12Studios.com. And, of course, you can always download the TuneIn app. And we are standing on business on this Wednesday because there is a lot to get to, a lot to preview, including the final week of games in the Big 12 with Black Friday games to talk about, including Justin Spears for the Tucson Star, who joins us coming up in about 20 minutes from now to help us break down the Territorial Cup, the most impactful meeting between Arizona and Arizona State in the last 11 years, probably, since it was for the Pac-12 South title back in 2014, and both, as we learned yesterday during the latest CFP rankings, we top 25 teams, so a top 25 matchup in Tempe. Justin Spears joins us. Plus, we are talking about the college football playoff rankings. Shahan Jeyarajah joins us later on in the show from CBS Sports. You're not going to want to miss our buddy Shahan Jeyarajah. And also, the huge news today, and this is where we stand on business here on a Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Oklahoma State reportedly has a new football coach, Eric Morris, the former Texas Tech Red Raider, who coached multiple times under Mike Leach at Texas Tech and then at Washington State, has most recently been the coach at North Texas, coached as the head coach at Incarnate Word University in San Antonio. Eric Morris is set to become the next head football coach at Oklahoma State. McLean Baxley from Oklahoma State 24/7 will join us coming up in about 40 minutes from now to help us break down this hire. But Taman Turner, Ari Temkin, this is, in my opinion, a slam dunk hire for Oklahoma State. When you look at just his history, offensive philosophy, offensive football, it fits perfectly with the Big 12. And when you look at Eric Morris's tenure, you'd be hard-pressed to find a more impressive resume overall from a quarterback and an offensive coordinator and scheme standpoint. I don't think it's a stretch to call Eric Morris a modern-day quarterback genius because, I mean, he coached Mahomes at Texas Tech. He was the coach in 2022 at Washington State with Cam Ward and John Mateer, both on roster at Wazoo. This was after he found Cam Ward and brought him to Incarnate Word University. I mean, when you look at what Eric Morris has done from a quarterback standpoint, again, I don't know that you could find anybody that's better positioned to take over and immediately install an offense that's going to work with a quarterback, and it doesn't seem to matter. When you look at Eric Morris's time at North Texas, okay, so Eric Morris this year has a quarterback who is throwing for 3,469 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions, a 70% completion percentage as a redshirt freshman. That's this season. Last season, with Chandler Rogers at quarterback, or rather 2 seasons ago, with Chandler Rogers at quarterback, Chandler Rogers never completed a high percentage of his passes, never had over 3,000 yards passing, whether it was at Louisiana Monroe, whether it was at California in 2024. But in 2023 at North Texas, as the quarterback under Eric Morris, Chandler Rogers threw for 3,300 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 5 picks. Chandler Morris in 2024 at North Texas completed 63% of his passes, 3,700 yards, 31 touchdowns, 12 picks. I mean, look up and down Chandler Morris's career at Oklahoma, at TCU, at North Texas, at Virginia. I mean, nothing close to these numbers. I mean, go back and look at Mahomes and Davis Webb at Texas Tech. Nick Shimonek as the quarterback at Texas Tech the last year that Eric Morris was the OC completes 66% of his passes for 3,900 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 10 picks. This dude is a quarterback genius. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. You go back and look at the teams that he has either been the head coach, the offensive coordinator, an offensive analyst, whatever, in any role, in any capacity that he served, they've had explosive quarterback seasons and outlier seasons for a lot of these guys. I mean, we can look at Cam Ward and how Eric Morris found Cam Ward, brought him to Incarnate Word University, and, you know, in his first season, Cam Ward helped to lead Incarnate Word into the FCS playoffs, which then helped to get them into the FBS, and then helped to he turns him over to Washington State. He goes with him to Wazoo in 2022, and then becomes the first overall pick. I mean, you look at what John Mateer is doing now. Mateer is another guy that Eric Morris found. But not to mention the guys he's coached, obviously Mahomes and Cam Ward and John Mateer, and the list goes on and on and on. But other guys that maybe aren't as big or well known that, again, put together career seasons with Eric Morris as the head coach. So, whether or not he brings his quarterback from North Texas with him after he's had such a fantastic season, or if he goes out and brings somebody in the portal, my goodness, even if Zane Flores is the quarterback, you've got to feel good about what Eric Morris is going to bring to the table in terms of offensive football. Now, defensive football is a different animal, and that's historically true with many of these coaches, whether it be Cliff Kingsbury, who's a coach that Eric Morris worked under, or Mike Leach, obviously one of Eric Morris's greatest influences, or Kevin Sumlin, or some of these other coaches that he's worked under from an air raid perspective. Defense is certainly one of the overlooked parts of the schematics from a head coaching perspective, but still, overall, this is a fantastic hire. We talked a ton throughout this cycle about, there's no shortage of quality candidates out there. You're just not looking. And whether it was Jeff Traylor at UTSA, who's very much from the Joey McGuire cloth, cut from the same cloth as McGuire, or Eric Morris, who's got Big 12 written all over him. He's got modern air raid written all over him. And, of course, just look at the quarterbacks that this guy has brought in, has coached, has brought up. I mean, it's impressive. You're going to be hard-pressed to find a better list of quarterbacks that a coach has worked around and helped to develop. And not only, sometimes you get a quarterback and a coach that seem to be around the same situation where there's a little bit of a coincidence involved in it. But, I mean, you look, and Eric Morris was instrumental in bringing Cam Ward to Incarnate Word, bringing him to Washington State, bringing John Mateer to Washington State. And then, of course, the quarterbacks North Texas, and the last of which here looks to be the best of those. Oklahoma State is in really good hands. If you can't tell, I'm extremely excited about this hire of Eric Morris. And look, I mean, we're going to talk with McLean Baxley about this coming up from Oklahoma State's 24/7. But you've got to feel really good about the offensive philosophy. And then, when you get down to it, this is what we would consider a modern air raid. And, it's very similar, I would say, to Lincoln Riley's offense insofar as you have a very small amount of plays. The playbook is not, long and wide. It's a very small amount of plays. It's just the window dressing, it's the pre-snap motion, and then it's the formations that they're being run out of, or the personnel packages. So you basically run the same play out of different personnel packages, or instead of this guy lining up on the left side, now he's on the right side. I mean, that's where this type of offense really gets you, and I think that's what makes it so quarterback friendly, and why so many quarterbacks have been so successful despite a lot of these guys. I mean, Chandler Rogers, Chandler Morris, back-to-back seasons for North Texas. Outlier type season statistically for these guys when you look at their careers. I mean, Chandler Morris this year at Virginia, 2,400 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. In 24 at North Texas, 3,700 yards, so 1,300 more passing yards. He also had twice as many touchdowns and less, or a few more interceptions, but on twice as many touchdowns, more than twice as many touchdowns, 31-12. Chandler Morris, his last year at TCU, only played in 7 games. Remember, he was hurt, but 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. I mean, outlier seasons. Chandler Rogers, 3,300 yards passing at North Texas in 2023. The year before at Louisiana Monroe, 2,400 yards passing, 15 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. This dude had 29 touchdowns and 5 picks in 2023 at North Texas. Outlier seasons. Then went on to play 8 games at Cal in 2024 and threw for 117 yards in 8 games. Meanwhile, threw for 3,000 yards, almost 3,500 yards at North Texas in 2023 under Eric Morris. So, there's the great quarterbacks that he's coached that we know about. Of course, Patrick Mahomes, Davis Webb, Cam Ward, John Mateer. These are guys that are NFL type quarterbacks, whether it be Mahomes or Webb, that have played. Mahomes needs no introduction. Webb's been an NFL quarterback. Cam Ward is the first overall pick. John Mateer is well on his way to becoming an NFL quarterback, but it's not just the top name guys that he brought in and helped develop. It's the other guys. It's the Nick Shimoneks of the world. It's the Chandler Morrises and Chandler Rogers of the world. It just doesn't matter who his quarterback has been. It's a simple offense. It's easy to digest, and it works. It's a fantastic hire. Love the hire. Eric Morris reportedly going to coach the rest of the season for North Texas, and then we'll take over at Oklahoma State. But when you think about Mike Gundy being there for 21 years and now Eric Morris taking over, and quite frankly, very surprised that Arkansas, couldn't outbid Eric Morris, and maybe it wasn't a case of that. We'll have to see as we visit with Eric Morris at some point in the next couple of weeks, hopefully after he finishes off his season with North Texas and officially takes over. But just an incredible hire. Cannot wait to talk about it with McLean Baxley coming up here in about 40 minutes.
Yeah, Ari, so the sun is shining again in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I think this is a fantastic hire. I mean, I think Oklahoma State's offense next year, or in the coming years, I should say, will have as much energy as you just had with that opening monologue. They are going to be very, very good. Look, North Texas's offense has ranked third amongst FBS schools in scoring average since 2023. They're 10-1 this year. Drew Meesmaker, their first-year freshman quarterback, has thrown for 3,469 yards. He's thrown for 26 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. You mentioned the quarterbacks that Eric Morris has coached and has been around, guys like John Mateer, guys like Patrick Mahomes. He signed Baker Mayfield as a walk-on quarterback at Texas Tech. I mean, Eric Morris is a fantastic hire. He's a West Texas guy. He's a man. He's 40. That's literally the truth. To take away from Mike Gundy. But listen, I think Oklahoma State is definitely excited about this hire. Obviously, they have had a rough period the last 2 years. That everybody knows that. And sometimes you just need a spark. And this is the spark that you're going to have. You mentioned how great he is at evaluating quarterbacks. I think not only is Drew Meesmaker going to go with him, but I think you're going to have a lot of people from North Texas go once that transfer portal, and just the guys he's able to recruit. I mean, Oklahoma State, their athletic director talked about how this is a new era. This is a new era of Oklahoma State football. I mean, to much respect to Mike Gundy and what he was able to do there. Obviously, the game has changed a little bit. The way that you bring players on, the transfer portal, the NIL. I don't know if Mike Gundy was able to become part of that. But I think what Eric Morris is doing is a new type of era and a new type of football that he wants to bring, and they are going to be fun to watch. Listen, it takes a time to rebuild a program, but I think it's fair to say once this thing is built, Oklahoma State is going to be very, very fun to watch.
Yeah, you mentioned Baker Mayfield, and Eric Morris actually, according to Bruce Feldman from The Athletic, who wrote about this, he evaluated Baker Mayfield, who had no Division I offers at that point and was a young assistant under Mike Leach at Washington State, and said that they should offer Mayfield. They did not end up offering Mayfield, and Mayfield ended up going to Texas Tech, where Mike Leach, of course, and Eric Morris played and coached together as a walk-on before transferring to Oklahoma, winning the Heisman and being the number 1 overall pick. So, yeah, I mean, his eye for talent at the quarterback position is second to none. Even the stories of guys that he didn't end up getting, like a Baker Mayfield, live in infamy via Bruce Feldman. All right, I am Ari Temkin, Taman Turner producing today's show. This is Big 12 Radio, off and rolling here on a Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Justin Spears helps us break down the Territorial Cup here coming up in about 6 minutes from now. But it'll be a ranked versus ranked matchup on Friday in Tempe between Arizona and Arizona State. The latest college football playoff rankings were released yesterday, and not much movement beyond Arizona State jumping 5 spots from 25 to 20, and Arizona getting into the top 25 at 25. So, the College Football Playoff Committee has been steadfast in ranking the Big 12 in those particular spots. Now, Utah does move down. Miami actually bumped Utah. Utah moves from 12 to 13, so they did get dinged a bit for the Kansas State win, having to come back against K-State. But BYU stays at 11, so still on the outside looking in, and this is obviously a huge weekend in college football to see if there's any slip-ups here that could upend the college football playoff ranking. So the big story from that is there's no movement, still based on the bracket, just one team in from the Big 12 with a path that's dwindling for multiple bids. And we'll see, obviously, when we get there, but we're rooting for chaos this weekend, especially in the SEC, whether it be in the Egg Bowl between Mississippi and Mississippi State, which, by the way, I think there could be some major chaos in that game with all of the distractions surrounding Lane Kiffin's announcement coming out after the game. And then, of course, the Iron Bowl as well. Can Auburn knock off Alabama, hand them their third loss, and effectively knock them out of the SEC title and perhaps college football playoff picture as well? So a huge weekend ahead to see if the Big 12 can earn a second bid into the college football playoff. All right, we also had the Players Era yesterday, and based on aggregate score, no Big 12 team is going to play for the Players Era championship this year. That instead goes to Michigan and Gonzaga. It looked in the early portion of the night as if Kansas may be a representative from the Big 12 to get to that championship, as they had out cumulatively scored Iowa State by a point. And Bill Self even said, after the game that they didn't even realize the first game about the scoring part of it. But Gonzaga and Michigan both rolled in their evening game, so they will move on with their total points outweighing Kansas or Iowa State. So Gonzaga, Michigan for the championship. Kansas will play Tennessee, a team that Houston lost to last night, for third place tonight from the Players Era tournament. Houston goes down to Tennessee. Iowa State and Kansas both win, but Kansas moved ahead of Iowa State in the standings based on their cumulative score, but it's Gonzaga and Michigan that advance. Also, K-State losing at Assembly Hall in Bloomington, Indiana last night pretty badly in a one-sided game. And then Arizona State just keeps on winning. Arizona State over Wazoo, 100-94. Wazoo obviously 3-4 on the season after this loss. They don't look great, but 6-1 Arizona State. They've really dominated so far in Maui. And then another loss for Utah. They go down in the Acrisure Classic last night, 68-58 to Grand Canyon. So some growing pains for Utah as they're off and rolling. All right, we're off and rolling. Justin Spears, the beat reporter for Tucson Star, plus Spears and Ali on ESPN Tucson, joins us next, talking about the Territorial Cup. It's Arizona State on Friday. It's a ranked matchup. It's the biggest Arizona State game since 2014. We're talking about Justin Spears next. This is Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo and heard on TuneIn, but while being watched on Big 12 Studios. Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Joined now by Justin Spears from the Tucson Star and ESPN Tucson. Spears and Ali, 7 to 9 a.m. It's Mountain? No, not Mountain. What
Mountain time now, yeah.
But is there like a specific Arizona time zone that we can just refer to as like both Mountain and Pacific, depending on the time of year?
It's so weird, man. It's like daylight savings doesn't affect us, but yet it does. Like
Right.
there's a certain part of the year where we are aligned with Pacific time and then East Coast time. Basically, okay, how I look at it is there's certain times of the year where Monday Night Football starts at 5:25 p.m. And then there are other times where it starts at 6:25 p.m. for us. That's how I look at daylight savings in Arizona is the time of kickoffs for Monday night and Sunday Night Football.
Well, how about the 9 a.m., noon games for the NFL versus the 10 a.m. games, or I guess 10 a.m. or 11 a.m., I should say, for those.
Yeah.
Noon, I say noon Central, 1 Eastern. I'm confused. I don't even know what time it is.
It's silly, man. It's crazy.
Justin, we were just talking before the Territorial Cup. This is the most impactful matchup between Arizona and Arizona State.
Yeah.
It's 2014, and maybe that one was more impactful because it led to a Big 12 South championship, but it just feels like within recent history, it's been a while since both of these teams have been good at the same time.
Yeah, because if you look at the recent history of Arizona versus ASU, one team is having a killer season and the other one is not, right? The last time that Arizona visited the Sun Devils in Tempe, it was Jed Fish's third year. They were in the middle of their winning streak, going to win 10 games, win the Alamo Bowl, and they just killed ASU. But that was also really the infancy stages of the Kenny Dillingham era. And then in just a quick turnaround, Kenny Dillingham was able to retain Cam Scattaboo, and he had Jordan Tyson and got Sam Levitt as well. And all of a sudden, ASU turns into this sleeper team into a team that's standing atop of the conference and winning the conference championship and going to the college football playoff. And meanwhile, Arizona, who was trying to recapture the magic that they got from the 2023 season, really struggled in Brent Brennan's first year, and then they went 4-8. So it's crazy. Last year's Territorial Cup, if you look at where the teams were, if you were to ask me, okay, this is where the teams are at the Territorial Cup, I would have said, oh, Arizona is in position to win the Big 12 championship and go to the CFP, and ASU is going to probably be 4-8, and it was flip-flopped. So it's just great to see both programs having success this year. It was expected for ASU after the season that they had last year. For Brent Brennan and crew, they were a wild card because they made a bunch of changes on their coaching staff. They got 3 new coordinators. They added 60 newcomers and a bunch of guys out of the transfer portal. So we were just kind of in wait-and-see mode for this Arizona football team. And lo and behold, here we are talking about them being 8-3. Worst case scenario, let's say they lose on Friday to ASU. They finish the regular season 8-4, which is, I mean, they flip-flopped their record from last year. So if you're an Arizona fan, you'll happily take that. But Territorial Cup is a very important game. And sometimes the season can be defined by this game. So it should be a fun one. It's the first time that both teams are bowl eligible going into this game since 2017. First time that both teams are ranked in this matchup since 2014. And like you said, Ari, the winner of that game went on to go to the Pac-12 championship, and they won the Pac-12 South. There's no sort of, things at stake here, but both teams are trying to get to their 9th win and improve their bowl resume. So it should be a fun one on Friday. I can't wait.
Yeah, and for those of us that are part of the old Big 12, just give us a little bit of a history lesson here on the Territorial Cup and the trophy and everything else.
Well, it is the oldest trophy in college athletics for rivalries. It was established in 1899. There was a point in time where they didn't have the Territorial Cup, like they couldn't find it. It was gone, and I think they discovered it hidden somewhere, and then they got it graded or whatever, and they're like, no, this is the official Territorial Cup, so they brought it back. And so the Territorial Cup is back. It's a heated rivalry. It's more so heated in football than it is any other sport. Basketball, let's face it, Arizona has dominated that series, right? Football, it's been back and forth. Arizona leads the all-time series. It's 50-46-1 for the Wildcats. This year is the 99th edition, so next year's the big one, the Big 100 down in Tucson. But this is the first one in the Big 12 era in Tempe, and it's two teams that are ranked, two teams that are really good. And I mean, some of the biggest moments for Arizona football happened in this game. Like the greatest play in program history is Chuck Cecil's 106-yard pick six against the Sun Devils. And ASU, they were trying to, get to the Rose Bowl, and they had higher aspirations than just, have a strong regular season. And Chuck Cecil's pick six prevented them from having that magical season. And that's viewed as the greatest play in program history. My favorite Territorial Cup moment is 2016 when Arizona was 3-9, but you never would have guessed Arizona went 3-9 because they beat ASU. And how they did it by not attempting a pass in the second half.
Wow.
They literally ran every single play in 2016, and ASU had 5 wins at the time, so they kept ASU from going to a bowl game, and then they just ran it every single play in the second half. Like, I mean, if you're a defense, like how defeated do you feel after a game like that? Like that's just terrible. So there's been a lot of fun moments, a lot of off the field stuff, right? Like they have an A mountain connected to their stadium up in Tempe. There's an A mountain down here in Tucson. Fans from opposing teams will come down and paint the A the color of their team. So there's just a lot of stuff that goes into this rivalry. Is it the best rivalry in college football? No. I mean, you got the Ohio States and the Michigans, and there's some very bitter rivals, right? Auburn, Alabama. But this one, the history of it, just the stuff, all the matchups, it's definitely a fun one.
Yeah, and it feels like both are potentially entering, huge eras for their football programs. But with that being said, Arizona, but he also has a history at UCLA. That job is open. It's amazing the difference a year will make, where felt like Arizona wanted him out after a year, and he sticks around and has a great season year 2. And I mean, it feels like there's rumors surrounding him in UCLA. What do you know about that situation?
Yeah, I think that's not going to happen. I just think that Brent Brennan loves Arizona, and I know Brent Brennan went to UCLA. He's a graduate of that university and played for them. But his wife went to the University of Arizona, and he started essentially his coaching career at the University of Arizona under Dick Tomey. So Brent Brennan, in a lot of ways, is kind of like an honorary Wildcat. His brother played for Dick Tomey and was a wide receiver in Brad Brennan. So he is, I think, just rooted here. And, I mean, Arizona, in my opinion, is an easier job than UCLA, right? Well, I mean, at UCLA, you've got half-empty Rose Bowl. Now, I know that Arizona fans, they need to step up their game when it comes to, showing up for the Wildcats. But the appreciation, the support for UCLA football, I just don't think you get that. I just think that Arizona is in a much better position as a football program than UCLA. And so I think that, yes, the UCLA job is intriguing. I think if there's anybody with Arizona ties that could be connected to the UCLA job, it's the guy that was Brent Brennan's predecessor in Jedd Fisch, who was an interim head coach for UCLA back in 2017 and has ties to Los Angeles. Washington is a much better job than UCLA, don't get me wrong, but who knows, maybe Jedd Fisch looks at the UCLA job as like, you know what, that might be a very interesting challenge for me. And if I could turn UCLA football around, I can make magic with any football program, whether it's here or in the NFL. So I think Brent Brennan, he's going to be staying here for the long haul. I've said it ever since Brent Brennan took the job. He's either going to get fired or he's going to retire here. And if he continues to do what he's doing right now in year 2, I think he's going to be here for a long time.
Justin, Arizona has now won 4 in a row. They did that after coming off of 2 back-to-back losses. One really tough one versus BYU that went into double overtime. We all remember that. And then the game against Houston that wasn't close. You mentioned the fans. How is the morale going into this game, now on a 4-game win streak and in the top 25?
Yeah, I think that the fans not showing up this year, part of it was they had a lot of early games. And, parents got to take kids to play youth sports, and there's a lot of stuff happening in Tucson early in the morning on Saturday. So I think that had something to do with attendance. I also think that the fans were also in kind of wait and see mode with this team because they were deeply disappointed last year because they were supposed to be one of those upper tier teams in the Big 12 and maybe replicating some of the stuff that they did in 2023, and they fell on their face. And so Arizona football fans were like, okay, for 2025, let's just kind of wait and see how things are. And now that Brent Brennan has put together some impressive wins, 4 in a row, like you mentioned, and one of those is a top 25 win on the road against Cincinnati, which is another really good team in this league. And now that Brent Brennan has won 4 straight games, and then this is coming off of 2 one-possession losses. Like you said, losing to double overtime to BYU, a team that's most likely going to be in the Big 12 championship, and then Houston, which is one of the biggest surprises this year in the Big 12. Arizona lost to them on a walk-off field goal. So we're talking about 2 losses right there that Arizona was in position to win. And if the ball bounced Arizona's way, we could be talking about Arizona as that BYU team that's, right there on the cusp of maybe playing Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship. So I think the fact that they've been competitive in pretty much every game this season. Iowa State, they were somewhat competitive, and then that game kind of got a little out of hand, and they were unable to really get back into that game. But I just think that the morale right now, people love this Arizona team because the offense is exciting. They're averaging over 34 points per game. And the defense, they got the 6th best passing defense in college football. They're forcing 23 takeaways this year, which is tied for the 6th most in college football. So defense is creating takeaways. Offense is exciting and putting up points, and they're winning. That's a recipe for Arizona fans to really get behind this team. And I think next year, that's when you're really going to start to see the fans show out because I think Brent Brennan is going to stay here. The staff is going to be here. Noah Fafita is going to come back for his senior year, and there's going to be a lot of excitement for the 2026 Wildcats. But for 2025, hey, sky's the limit. If they can win this game coming up here on Friday, they could win the bowl game, and they could become the 5th team in program history to win at least 10 games. And it's pretty cool to say that Noah Fafita was a part of 2 of those teams if they are able to win these next 2 games.
Justin Spears from the Tucson Star and ESPN Tucson joining us here on Big 12 Radio. Better hire for Brent Brennan, Danny Gonzalez or Seth Doege?
Ooh, man. That is such a difficult question just because Arizona's offense was a complete train wreck last year. And now there is some balance, and it looks like a high-powered offense. But, man, I look at what Danny Gonzalez has done despite the injuries, and they've been banged up on the defensive line. They've had some injuries in the interior defensive line. And if you look at, consistently throughout the season, Danny Gonzalez has made all the proper adjustments after the first and second quarter. Not to say that Seth Doege hasn't. He has. But in 11 games this year, only 4 opponents have had more yards and points in the second half than the first half. 2 of those opponents were garbage time, right? It was like Colorado and Weber State, right? So you're playing your 3rd and 4th stringers. They make great adjustments in the second half. And you saw that against Baylor when they held the Bears, which a high-powered offense led by Sawyer Robertson, who's got the most passing yards in the Big 12. Baylor did not score a single point in that second half. Arizona outscored Baylor 27-0 in that second half, and a big part of that was because of the defensive adjustments, creating takeaways, and getting a bunch of 4th down stops. And there's a reason why Danny Gonzalez is up for the Broyles Award, which is given to the top assistant in college football. With all due respect to Seth Doege is not on that list. Danny Gonzalez is. So because of the Broyles Award, I will say Danny Gonzalez was the better coordinator hire.
Yeah, and I agree. And look, you're also not sure how much it's Doege versus Brennan, who's an offensive guy. So they're both obviously have saved this program after last year looking just atrocious. We know offensively how bad they looked last year too. All right, Justin, one basketball question for you. Number one, were you surprised that Arizona didn't jump both Houston and Purdue to be number 1 in the AP poll based on their 3 wins. And they've got Auburn and Alabama coming up in a couple of weeks here. So they get the
Yeah.
full-on Iron Bowl before Big 12 play starts.
Yeah, I think that this team is the best team in college basketball. But, Tommy, he doesn't care about the rankings. He's like, yeah, whatever. We're keeping our nose down and we're just kind of focusing on Arizona. Purdue's had some impressive wins, right? And they haven't had really any reason to lose their number one spot. I just think that Arizona, with the wins that they've compiled this year, they're more deserving of that number one ranking. But if they continue to play like this, then eventually they're going to get that number one ranking. And the best case scenario happened for Arizona. Like I thought maybe at this point they'd have a loss, maybe two, right? Because they're relying on freshmen more so than they have in the last few years. So I thought maybe they take their lumps along the way. But this team, I think, has been very impressive. Jaden Bradley has been a very savvy veteran and a consistent leader in that backcourt. Braden Burries was finally able to get going against Denver with 20 points after kind of a rough start. So this is a really good Arizona basketball team. They are very deep. And I think this tough non-conference schedule, and then when they go through the gauntlet that is the Big 12, it's only going to get this team prepared for March and eventually late April. And they have not played basketball in late April since 2001. And right now, Tommy Lloyd has the team to get Arizona to the Final Four.
Yeah, no kidding about that. Justin Spears, ESPN Tucson, Spears and Ali, and of course, Tucson Star. Justin, you're the best, buddy. Enjoy the game on Friday. Happy Thanksgiving, brother.
Happy Thanksgiving to you guys. Appreciate you.
Justin Spears joining us here. All right, let's talk about the huge news with McLean Baxley from Oklahoma State 24/7 next. Eric Morris is in at Oklahoma State. How excited is Stillwater and McLean Baxley? That's next. This is Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. It's Big 12 Radio presented by Modelo on this Wednesday that feels like a Friday with Thanksgiving coming up. And we have not spent a ton of time this season talking about Oklahoma State because, well, the Cowboys have been on a rough losing streak over the last 2 seasons in the Big 12. And now they've got a new head football coach for the first time in over 2 decades. McLean Baxley, who covers Oklahoma State for Oklahoma State 24/7, is joining us here on Big 12 Radio to break down the hiring of Eric Morris. Eric Morris, the former North Texas coach, former Texas Tech wide receiver who's coached under Mike Leach, and a major Mike Leach disciple, takes over now at Oklahoma State. McLean, how are you?
Doing good.
Yeah, so, I mean, Eric Morris, his history suggests that quarterback should be no issue and offensive football should be no issue at Oklahoma State.
Which that has been an issue at Oklahoma State, last 5-10 years. It's been probably since 2018 since they've had a really strong, pro-style passing quarterback. I know Spencer Sanders had some success back in 2020, 2021. But yeah, I mean, it's very exciting for Oklahoma State, a program that is used to a lot of offense. You think back to Brandon Weeden and Justin Blackman back in 2010, 2011, and it's been a while since they've had that type of offensive threat. Now they go out and get Eric Morris, who has the Mean Green as the number 1 total offense, the number 1 scoring offense, and just consistently produced points and yards pretty much everywhere he's been. So it's very exciting for Stillwater.
Yeah, I mean, there were rumors linking Eric Morris to the Arkansas job too. I mean, let's just say he picked Oklahoma State over Arkansas. What do you think stood out to him about that?
I think it's easier to get to the playoff and get to the postseason in the Big 12. Obviously, the SEC has a lot of teams. I think right now there's 5 or 6 teams that are still in contention to make that 12-team playoff, and to get to the top of the college football world through the Big 12 seems like a simpler path. And I think Oklahoma State really sold their NIL, really sold their ability to rebuild this program in your vision. Arkansas, there's a lot of money. I'm sure his the salary might have been higher in Fayetteville, but there's a real blank slate here for him. Obviously Mike Gundy being here for 20 plus years and 30, 40 years in different capacities, but being able to kind of step in and he's going to have the pick of the litter for coaches and players that are both here, and he wants to bring with him from North Texas and elsewhere. So I think a lot of just kind of more he can make this program Eric Morris's rather than kind of stepping into a standard or a expectation of what Arkansas or Oklahoma State would have wanted.
Yeah, I'm curious, McLean, overall for your thoughts on what this means from a money standpoint. One of the issues with Mike Gundy towards the end of his tenure was maybe he had alienated some of the boosters, and there were probably some people that closed their pocketbooks due to Gundy. What does this do to the money access for Oklahoma State?
I think we're about to see an influx, and I think there's been some people that I've talked to, and other outlets have reported on in the days after Gundy was fired. A lot of boosters and big spenders in Stillwater were saying they've got the money to give it to NIL, give to revenue sharing, and really boost this program. And I think now we're going to see how true that is. I think there is some truth to that matter. I know that Oklahoma State has really pitched the program as they're willing to spend, willing to compete with some of the bigger programs in the country. Some of these jobs that were also open there, they might not be at the level of an LSU or a Florida or even an Auburn, but I think some of these other mid to high level power programs, they're right up there with them. So we're going to find out in the next couple of months about how true and how much they are able to get. Are they able to go out and get a Heisman contender right now, or are they going to wait a year or so to develop that? But I think there's definitely money that's being ready to be spent on Eric Morris' squad.
McLean, with Oklahoma State not winning an in-conference game in the last 2 years, what expectations will there be next year for Eric Morris, and is there any pressure for him to meet those expectations?
I think winning a Big 12 game will be the first step to getting at. But I think getting this team back to a bowl game is the perfect first step. And then I think there are expectations of getting this team to the 12-team playoff. It's been since 2021 that they really had a shot at making the playoff. Back then it was obviously a 14 playoff, and they came up a yard short against Baylor in the Big 12 championship to keep them out of the playoff. But I think this is a program and a fan base that is hungry for wins, hungry for getting back into that top 25, top 15 team consistently. That's where they've been for 20 years. under Mike Gundy. So getting back to that standard of, expecting to win, not, going up on Saturday morning, going up on Saturday to Boone Pickens, hoping you score a touchdown or hoping you keep it close for, 3 quarters. So that's the expectation. I think Eric Morris understands that. And I think Eric Morris has kind of shown that he can, take a team that's losing. When he got to North Texas, they were, I think, 5-7. 2 years later now, they're in contention for the American Conference and more. So I think he understands how to get a program turned around, and we'll see over the next 6 to 8 months if he can do that.
It appears Morris is going to bring his North Texas staff with him. Have you heard the same? And so does that mean Skylar Cassidy will be the defensive coordinator?
I haven't been able to confirm that. I've seen that floated around in at different outlets, both locally and nationally. But yeah, I mean, it seems this is a very tight-knit group. They're kind of a group that kind of rebuilt North Texas together, and obviously it's worked. They're ranked in the top 25 in the AP poll, and had really great success. So it wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, a lot of familiarity with Texas and the surrounding states, which will be huge for recruiting and just keeping the same. It's working here in North Texas. Why won't it work in Stillwater? So I could definitely see a scenario where Skylar Cassidy and maybe Jordan Davis, his OC, follow him to Stillwater.
McLean, with Oklahoma State, with their offense that you expect to see under Eric Morris. We meant, Ari and I had mentioned earlier some of the quarterbacks that have been under the Eric Morris tree: Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, just to name a couple, John Mateer. What do you expect to see potentially, and I might just be speculating, but from Drew Meesmaker, freshman quarterback, if he does transfer to Oklahoma State, how big will that be for the Cowboys?
Like I said earlier, I mean, it's been 7 or 8 years since they've had a true passing threat. They've had good receivers. They had Brennan Presley a couple years ago. It was good. They've had James Washington was there when Mason Rudolph was there back in 2017-18. But it's been a minute since they've had a true threat that can really beat you down the field and put up 300, 400 yard games. I think that was the standard for a while. Back in the early 2000s, and so I think they're fully expecting to do that again. They've done it, for North Texas this season, and I think he's a guy that could come in and immediately, again, talking about keeping things, just kind of transitioning and keeping things straight and not having much change will be big for Morris to get used to Stillwater. But good for the team just kind of rally around a guy that they're familiar with and a guy that they has shown that he can have success, at the college football level.
We're talking with McLean Baxley here on Big 12 Radio from Oklahoma State 24/7. I'm trying to remember from a non-conference standpoint, like they had Oregon this year. What is the early look at the non-conference slate for Oklahoma State into 2026?
We've got Oregon again. Oregon will come to Stillwater. They've got Arkansas. They return to Fayetteville. Those are 2 games that are really going to stand out. Obviously, an SEC team and I think Arkansas is the next year, 2027. But yeah, next year they've got at Tulsa, host Oregon, and then they host Murray State, FCS program. So, Tulsa, they lost to Tulsa this year, so I think that's gonna be the first game of the season. And can Eric Morris beat Tulsa? Something he's done, at North Texas. But that'll be a good, all right, we're moving forward. We're beating the FBS team. September 12th, Oregon comes to Boone Pickens Stadium in a game that, Oregon's going to be a top 10 team again next year, I presume. And really kind of where's this program now? Obviously, it's only, it will have only been game 2 of the Morris era. But just kind of seeing, barometer of last year where Oklahoma State really didn't even show up in Eugene, and that was a first game for Zane Flores on the road for a top 5 team. A lot going against them, but it was a terrible game. And this year, next year, kind of showing up and putting a touchdown on the board, or not just being fully walked over like they were this past season or earlier this season. So those are the 2 non-conference games, and then Murray State should be just an FCS tune-up before a Big 12 play gets underway. But an exciting home slate for home opener for Eric Morris.
Yeah, really interesting. Home opener against Oregon after losing by 100.
That was the first half, I believe. Yeah.
All right, real quick before we let you go, kind of your overall thoughts on Oklahoma State basketball. Feels like Steve Lutz's crew is ahead of schedule here, year two.
Yeah, this is a tournament team. I think they've got a lot of shooters. They've always been a very offensively minded team. Throughout Lutz's career, at Western Kentucky, at Corpus Christi before he got to Stillwater. But yeah, they can score. Defense is going to continue to get better. That's something that even after a big offensive output, Steve Lutz comes in the press conference room and is still just really annoyed and upset that the defensive standard isn't where it needs to be, but I think that's going to continue to grow. They've got a big game on Thursday against Northwestern up in Chicago. Both teams are ranked in the top 60 in the KenPom ratings and a lot of metrics that they use. So, another big barometer before playing OU in a couple weeks down in OKC. So, a couple of big games left on the non-conference schedule before they go into the best conference in basketball, playing 20 Big 12 games over the next 3 or 4 months. So I think Steve Lutz definitely has a tournament team that will just continue to get better over the next couple of months.
McLean Baxley, Oklahoma State 24/7. Thanks for your time, man. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, y'all. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, McLean.
Thank you, McLean Baxley, joining us here. Big 12 Radio. Yeah, Oklahoma State has lost 2 years worth of Big 12 games. If they lose again on Saturday, it'll be 2 full seasons worth of Big 12 football games. And their last win was November 25th, almost exactly 2 years ago, 2023, against BYU in a double overtime game that helped them clinch a spot in the Big 12 championship game. For some reason, Bedlam at one point was the end of the season, so I had in my mind the last win they had in Big 12 play was against Oklahoma and Bedlam, the final Bedlam series. But no, that's not the case. They won Bedlam, then lost at UCF 45-3. And then followed it up with 2 straight wins, Houston and BYU, to clinch their spot in the Big 12 championship game, losing to Texas. And they've lost every single Big 12 game since then, going back to December 2nd, 2023. We'll see if Eric Morris can change those fortunes. I certainly believe that will be the case. This is Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, and certainly Modelo is for the full-time fans at Oklahoma State who've been waiting around for a much more competitive football team, and they are on the cusp of that with the hiring of Eric Morris. More to come, including Shahan J. Raja, Marcus Coleman, the former Texas Tech Red Raider defensive back. Plus, we're talking with Chris Cartman from SunDevilSource.com about the Territorial Cup game. It's all coming up here on a Wednesday before Thanksgiving. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo on Big 12 Radio, on TuneIn, and Big 12 Studios. This is Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Games of the week this week in the Big 12, which you can catch as a part of Big 12 Radio on TuneIn. We've got the Territorial Cup for you on Friday, Black Friday. It's Arizona State at 8 o'clock Central. And then Saturday, our game of the week is Texas Tech at West Virginia. The Big 12 championship picture, pretty cut and dried. Texas Tech and BYU, win and you're in. And it would be the first time since the Big 12 championship game was reinstalled that we would have two one-loss or less teams featured in the Big 12 championship. Each and every season there's been at least one two-loss team in the Big 12 title. This could be the first year with just one. Coming up in about 20 minutes from now, we'll talk with Hans Olsen from the BYU Radio Network. Always fun to visit with Hans because he gives us great insight into the team, the games, as somebody that played, but also can't wait to talk with him about the CFP rankings, which were released on Tuesday night, as they are each and every Tuesday night during November and into the end of the football season. And right now, BYU, despite basically only having 3 losses over the last 2 seasons and 1 loss this year, still finds itself on the outside looking in terms of the CFP picture. So, based on how things are constituted today, it looks like BYU is going to have to win a Big 12 championship in order to get that automatic bid. And even then, we'll see if Texas Tech could still get in and be a second bid for the Big 12. But the SEC right now has a log jam at the top. We're going to need some chaos, it appears, on this weekend, Friday, Saturday, with the Egg Bowl, with the Iron Bowl. I'm not sure that if Texas beats A&M that helps the Big 12 at all, because that could put Texas firmly back in the CFP picture with a win despite 3 losses. So, we'll see how this all shakes out. But can't wait to talk with Hans Olsen about the BYU-UCF matchup. Both Texas Tech and BYU in pretty good situations in terms of who they have in order to win and get into the Big 12 championship game. These are not premier matchups by any stretch of the imagination. We've got 2 teams at the bottom of the conference in West Virginia and UCF that both Texas Tech and BYU need to win and get in. But again, can never take any of these wins for granted. So if one loses, that opens up the door for a Utah or an Arizona State to potentially slide into that Big 12 championship. Taman Turner producing today's show. I am Ari Temkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. You can always catch all of our interviews and great segments isolated as a part of TuneIn, Big 12 Radio on TuneIn, or search Big 12 Radio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or TuneIn On Demand, and that's where you can catch plenty of our great segments as well as interviews that we do throughout the week. Big 12 Radio brought to you by the Full-Time Fan by Modelo on this Wednesday before Thanksgiving. All right, so taking a quick gander at some of these matchups in Week 14 of the Big 12, and last year this thing came down to the final snap deep into the night on Saturday to find the Big 12 championship matchup. It came down to tiebreakers, and it really came down to the wire. This year it might be a little bit different. Again, we'll have to see how it goes with both Texas Tech and West Virginia. But Black Friday starts off with 2 games, including Senior Day at the brand spanking new booth in Lawrence, Kansas, between Utah and Kansas, and a Kansas team that heads in needing 1 win to get to bowl eligibility, having lost 3 of their last 4 games, with the lone win being against Oklahoma State to get them to 5 wins. Utah comes in rolling. And then the nightcap on Friday is Arizona State, the Territorial Cup, the most substantial Territorial Cup since at least 2014, when both teams were vying for a spot in the Pac-12 championship game. And Arizona rolls in with some legitimate momentum behind one of the league's most efficient offenses, probably one of the country's most underrated offenses, with Noah Fafita, arguably the offensive MVP in the Big 12 to this point in the season. And then what they have at running back, Seth Dagey in 1 year has really remade the offense. But the story for Arizona, as we talked with Justin Spears earlier in the show, is really the defensive side of the football with Danny Gonzalez and what he's meant to, this has been a very opportunistic Arizona defense. Last year, Arizona could not run the football, could not play defense. So if you isolate 2 things that were major changes this year, that's it. They have become very good defensively, very opportunistic. One of the top passing defenses in the country, and then have really turned around their running game, whether it be through Seth Dagy's schematics and certainly through the talent at the running back position as well. Now, Arizona State, what a season it's been for them despite, major injuries that they've had all season long. Tyson has returned, and, but he missed the majority of the season. Sam Levitt has missed a good chunk of the season. Xavier Alford has missed basically the entire season. So you could argue their top three most important players have missed the entire season or the majority of the season. And despite that, they're still 20th in the latest CFP rankings, and they sit 1 win away from 9 wins. Both Arizona and Arizona State looking to get to 9 wins. And, look, I think when you look culturally at Arizona State, what Kenny Dillingham has meant, we can sit here and just talk about the cultural part of Arizona State football, but I think it's just evident in, the players that they have. And Tyson in particular. I mean, Jordan Tyson is a guy that is, going to be a first-round NFL draft pick in the upcoming April draft. And if he isn't, it's just because of the injuries he suffered this year. But he is going to be an NFL receiver. He is a incredibly talented guy. He could have shut it down. There's no reason that he needed to return at the end of the year. I mean, Arizona State still has a shot at a Big 12 championship, but it's an outside shot. And I think in a lot of cases, guys just sit it out. But Tyson, I think him coming back to play in these final 3 games, I mean, he played for the first time last week in a long time. He'll play again this week, and then in their bowl game, I'd imagine, unless he sits that one out. I mean, it's impressive. And here's what Tyson said about the meaning of that and playing will be his final game in Tempe.
I try not to look into the future, just be where my feet at. But it's a possibility. You never know what God has planned. So I think it's too many. Just all the times my teammates grinding in the summers, having fun at Camp T. So it's hard to pinpoint one, but just definitely being with the guys is probably going to be a lot of them.
Yeah, so Tyson, again, kind of, showing the value of the culture at Arizona State, and a guy that in a lot of situations probably wouldn't be playing in this part of the season given the context, is laying on the line here to finish off the season with Arizona State. And a guy that 59 receptions, 689 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And you consider he missed the end of last season, still not too far off from a touchdown perspective. 8 touchdowns this year, and for a while, Tyson was sort of the only option at wide receiver for Arizona State. Only 2 touchdowns less than he had last year and playing, the majority of the season. The other story with Jordan Tyson is that he transferred to Arizona State from Colorado when Deion first came on board. Tyson was at Colorado in 22, had 470 for 4 touchdowns. Deion Sanders comes over in 23. He leaves. And apparently before the game on Saturday, Jordan Tyson went and apologized to Deion Sanders. Here's what Deion Sanders had to say about that.
Who was the best receiver on the past team we just played?
Jordan Tyson.
Jordan Tyson. Didn't Jordan Tyson play here?
Yeah.
And he left because of several different things. Jordan Tyson found his way into my dressing room downstairs at the conclusion of the game. Jordan Tyson came in there to say, "Coach, I apologize." I said, "Young man, let me tell you something, man. I love you. I appreciate you. I pray to God that you're a top 10 pick, top 5 pick because you got it. You don't have to apologize to me. You're young, man. I was young. I was making some of the same mistakes when I was a short of your age. I'm just thankful that you got on the right course." He's trying his best to walk with the Lord. I mean, Hines Ward is his coach, and that's my boy. So I understand this, and Jordan told me some things personally. But isn't this what it's all about? That moment. Even though we're getting a bus kicking, I'm sitting up there going through the game in my head, and he walks in, fully uniform, and says that. You got to understand, man, that cleans up a lot of the mess that's going on, that's transpiring right now, but he got it. I just pray that the multitude in our locker room gets it, because he got it before it was too late. And that moment right there, that's all us coaches coach for, that moment. So I'm praying for him. I'm wishing him the best. And I know he's going to do what he does because he's a freak of an athlete. And I'm just proud of that moment. Not for me, for him. Proud of that moment.
That is really cool.
That's some strong words right there.
Yeah, you consider the context of the situation, and there's Deion talking about, after the game, Tyson comes up and says, "Coach, I apologize." And who knows, was he apologizing for leaving? Was he apologizing for the way that he left? Was he apologizing for all of it? It speaks to his character. Pretty cool exchange there, and I love the answer and power from Deion there of, hey, you don't have anything to apologize for. You made a decision that was in the best interests of you, and I applaud you for doing that. And look, it's worked out. I mean, Tyson had the talent as a guy that came out of Allen High School in Allen, Texas, just north of Dallas, a powerhouse of a suburban football program in the Dallas area. And, his first year at Colorado, not great in terms of what we would see from him in the next two at Arizona State. Now he's rounded himself into a first-round draft pick at the wide receiver position. And so, I mean, and not only that, but in being able to play under Hines Ward. I mean, Hines Ward's got to be the one, NFL Pro Football Hall of Famer that's not on Colorado staff right now. And, Hines Ward has brought a lot to the Arizona State staff, and a lot of that we know. But I think just the meat and potatoes part of the position, what a credibility that he has as a guy that's a Hall of Famer, been to the mountaintop, been one of the top players in the league at his position, and, has won a Super Bowl. And, I mean, he's known at Arizona State as being the guy that, teaches blocking, the importance of sticking your nose in as a wide receiver. So, we know Hines Ward as a wide receiver is a big play threat down the field, but his ability to block, to be a huge part of the offense and the offensive machine is why he's such a credible and good coach. And, for Tyson, that's probably one of the missing pieces that has made him a well-rounded wide receiver. So, really cool exchange there between, Tyson and Deion Sanders that we learned that happened following Arizona State's win over Colorado. So it should be a really fun game Friday in Tempe between Arizona and Arizona State. All right, the other two games to focus in on, because from big picture standpoint in the Big 12, nothing else really matters for what happens this weekend unless Texas Tech loses at West Virginia or UCF loses at BYU. Or rather, BYU loses against UCF. That's what you can get into. All right, what does Arizona do? What does Utah do against Kansas? But so those Friday games, the outcomes there might have a better impact, a larger impact based on what happened Saturday. But again, I mean, to think that a Texas Tech team that has dominated the field, has dominated the top teams in the Big 12 so far. The only team that didn't dominate was an Arizona State team that was as fully healthy as they've been all year, amazingly. But other than that, they've dominated the field. So I think they won't go to Morgantown and dominate West Virginia in the final game of the regular season. That would be a huge surprise. I mean, look, Texas Tech, it's not about the offense, it's about the defense. And that's where I think, sometimes you can have off days from an offensive perspective. We look at that in basketball, you miss shots sometimes. That happens. Elite offenses do that. But, for my money, for this defense to go on the road and lay an egg against, a true freshman quarterback, I just don't see it. I think Shilwood, the defensive coordinator, the talent they have, I think when you have that good of a defense, you go on the road and you take care of business. It's why, I'm not that concerned with Texas Tech. It's a game, and they've got to win it in order to clinch their spot and do something they've never done before as a program, and that's play for a Big 12 championship. Not only has Texas Tech never won a Big 12 championship, they've never played for a Big 12 championship. So they've got to take care of business against West Virginia, and I think, again, for a defense as dominant as they've been, I expect them to go in there and get the dub. And then for BYU playing at home, that helps a ton. And, while I think, UCF may be able to do some things that maybe at a higher level than West Virginia can to West Virginia, I just, UCF has struggled on the road in the Big 12. They've been a really bad road team in the Big 12. And then on top of that, you're going to Provo, and, BYU needs a win to get in. So, again, it's been a while since it's been this cut and dry in terms of heading into the final week of what could happen. If, what happens Friday, Utah beats Kansas and Arizona State beats Arizona. Both teams are in position to pounce with tie-breaking opportunities, but that'll all matter on Saturday when Texas Tech and West Virginia play, and and UCF and BYU play. I expect to see BYU and Texas Tech playing for the Big 12 championship game there a week from Saturday in Arlington. And if you have not yet gotten your tickets, go check it out. You could be in the Pardee Pit with John Pardee, who's going to be the great halftime performer, is going to be performing with the marching bands from various from BYU and from Texas Tech, assuming those two teams win. So it's going to be a lot of fun out in Arlington in a couple of Saturdays. So make sure to buy your tickets today. Head on over to SeatGeek. That is where you can exclusively buy Big 12 championship tickets. John Pardee is the halftime performer, and he is the first Big 12 country music headliner at its football championship. And I've been led to believe by my nieces here in Houston, as I'm out in Houston for Thanksgiving, that John Pardee is a big-time performer. Shows how old I am. But my nieces who are in high school have told me that John Pardee is it. So make sure to check it out. The Big 12 championship. Texas Tech and BYU fans or Big 12 fans or John Pardee fans. There's Party Pit, premium experiences in front of the stage. Should be a lot of fun, including John Pardee's big hit Mr. Saturday Night on a Saturday day. December 6th, AT&T Stadium. Could be Texas Tech, BYU. We shall see. All right, coming up next, Hans Olsen from the BYU Radio Network joins us to break down his thoughts on BYU UCF, his thoughts overall on BYU football and the standing in the CFP. That's all coming up next with Hans Olsen. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, exclusively on TuneIn. You can also catch us on Big 12 Studios. Big12studios.com is where you can find out all the platforms where you can find Big 12 Studios, including YouTube, Amazon Prime Video, Tubi, Roku, and plenty of other platforms. So check out Big12studios.com. And, of course, if you have not yet already, make sure to download the TuneIn app. Search Big 12 Radio and favorite the channel. That way it shows up each and every time you open up the app. Moments away from visiting and talking BYU football with the BYU radio analyst Hans Olsen as BYU gears up for their season finale, hoping to punch their ticket into the Big 12 championship game with a game against UCF in Provo. Taman, any concerns? Taman Turner, our producer, any concerns for you and BYU and UCF this weekend?
No concerns, but I will tell you what is bothering me. I don't like the fact that BYU is still ranked number 11. They should be ranked higher. I think that it's unfair to BYU. They're doing everything in their power to make this playoff, and I don't think it should be determined based on the Big 12 championship game. BYU is a playoff team. You look at some of the issues that some of the other teams have had that are ahead of them, Notre Dame, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. I mean, I just think that the Big 12 is kind of being blackballed. Right now it just happens to be BYU. But if Texas Tech loses the Big 12 championship game, why is this only going to be a one team that gets in out of the Big 12 when there are two quality playoff teams that are vying for that final spot? And it shouldn't come down to one game. That's bothering me about what's going on with BYU right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, BYU won at Arizona. Now, granted, it wasn't when Arizona was ranked, but still, I mean, they beat 23rd ranked Utah, who's only moved up in the rankings. They have the loss to Texas Tech. Cincinnati they beat when they were ranked. So, I mean, you look overall at some of their ranked wins and teams they've beaten. At Arizona, at Cincinnati, they lost at Texas Tech. It's the only loss they've had this season. I agree with you. I mean, there's 3 two-loss teams that are ahead of them in Bama, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma. And certainly out of all 3 of them, Notre Dame, from a resume standpoint, doesn't stack up to BYU. But, we know that from a beauty contest perspective that, Notre Dame is just going to get the benefit of the doubt. And so I think it's just that simple. I mean, now, with that being said, if Alabama has a slip up here in the final week of the regular season at the Iron Bowl, which could very well happen, if Ole Miss falls to 10-2, and loses in the Egg Bowl, would that be enough to push BYU over? I think certainly if Alabama loses and has a third loss, that could open up another at-large spot for the Big 12. But I think it's also important to note that the other at-large spot could be coming from the ACC now because of where Miami is situated. If Pitt beats Miami, then that's moot. But if Miami wins but doesn't play for the ACC championship, then that's a potential, 2-bid league as well as it was last year. So a lot of traffic in the playoff right now, and this will be a year where you're just not sure that a North Texas or a ACC automatic qualifier should be getting those bids, whereas in a year in which it's the 12 best teams playing, BYU is certainly one of them. There's no group of 6 participant, and Miami gets the ACC bid regardless of who wins the ACC championship.
All right, I agree with everything you just said, but let me just add something to it and flip it on its head. Let's say BYU, Texas Tech play in the Big 12 championship game, and now BYU wins, Texas loses. Now Texas Tech has 2 losses to BYU and Arizona State. Texas Tech is a playoff team, and they don't get in? I mean, come on. Yes, I agree with everything you just said about the scenarios, but the notion that both of these teams, I mean, we're assuming Texas Tech wins the Big 12 championship game just based on this conversation. But if BYU beats Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game and Texas Tech doesn't get in, what in the world going forward? I know we're going to talk about playoff expansion later on, but what does the Big 12 what in this current setting? What does a Big 12 team? What does the Big 12 have to do to get 2 teams in?
Yeah, no, I mean
it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, and if Texas Tech were to lose the Big 12 championship game to BYU, you would think, again, depending on what happens everywhere else, that Texas Tech would not fall all the way past 11, and that BYU would move up enough to get in. So I would think in that situation, that's where this becomes a 2-bid league. But even with BYU having 2 losses both to Tech, it feels like it would still warrant BYU getting a bid based on, again, their resume, based on the fact that the strength of what they've done the last 2 years. I mean, I moving forward, maybe it's the consistency at the top that would help. But because if Texas Tech's good again next year, and so that's used as another litmus test, maybe. But when you look at what the Big 12 said no to in terms of playoff expansion, hey, we want to earn it on the field, and as opposed to being guaranteed 2 bids every year, as much as it pains, it continues to pain me to say that, like, the automatic 2 bids seems to far outweigh the potential for 3 bids, because 2 bids is very difficult to think about for the Big 12. Now, maybe in a 16-team field or a larger field, 2 bids makes more sense for the Big 12, and that large bid is more of a commonplace. But in a 12-team situation with the resumes of BYU and Texas Tech, I don't think it's justified that the Big 12 needs more things to happen for this league to get 2 bids.
You know what I find funny, Ari, is that Notre Dame started 0-2, right? Now they're what, 9-2, give or take?
Yep.
Can you imagine if Texas Tech or BYU had started 0-2? If they'd be ranked in the top 10 right now? Just saying.
No chance. No chance.
No chance. It's remarkable.
I mean, and again, it's let's call a spade. Notre Dame is represented in the college football playoff committee. The college football playoff is made up of the conferences, specifically the SEC, the Big 10, the ACC, and the Big 12, and then the group of 6 conferences and Notre Dame. So Notre Dame has its own representation without being in a conference, and that clearly matters here. If we're comparing resumes, there's no chance that Notre Dame's resume is better than BYU's with 2 losses. BYU has 1 less loss, has more impressive wins, and Notre Dame seems to be buoyed in the top 10 by their losses being more impactful than their wins overall. And that's, last time I checked, wins should be more impactful. And you look at, whether they were ranked or not when they happened, winning at Arizona and at Cincinnati, those are 2 teams. Cincinnati was ranked, Arizona was not. Those are 2 impressive road wins for 2 teams that have been ranked in the college ball playoff rankings over the course of this season. Losing at Texas Tech, a top 5 team, like, it's just wild. I mean, overall, BYU should be in over Notre Dame, but Notre Dame, if we're calling a spade, will get in because they're Notre Dame, because their brand matters, and because Jack Swarbrick, not anymore, but their athletic director has his own representation in the committee and with the playoffs. So that seems to carry a lot of weight.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And it's going to be interesting when we talk later about playoff expansion. I only say that because what will that mean for the Big 12, assuming that they expand at some point? I just think that, in its current setting, and we knew when the playoff was created that, there were going to be issues at some point. And, I'm glad there's a playoff, but at the same time, the goal now has to be to make it better. And, I think about when Kalani Sitake was asked about style points. Style points to me, this is just my definition of it. It can be, there's no concrete to what it is. I mean, you're playing a football game. Things happen. Look at the Utah-Kansas State game. I mean, anything can happen unexpectedly. And I get it. You want to win in a particular way to boost your resume. But at the same time, football's a crazy sport. Anything can happen at any given time. And you have to focus on getting the wins. And that's what it should be about. And you bring up resume between BYU and Notre Dame. BYU's is more impressive based on wins. Everything else shouldn't matter.
Yeah, right. But, again, you can wrap yourself into a pretzel, twist yourself into a pretzel trying to justify Notre Dame's existence in this field. And that's just what they're going to do every year. Like, every year, we said it when they started 0-2. Every year, Notre Dame is going to get the benefit of the doubt. They're going to get the benefit of the doubt. Because their brand, there's no greater brand recognition piece than Notre Dame in this playoff. Every year. And, Notre Dame hasn't won a ton of games of substance. in a long time. And maybe that's partially due to their schedule, that their schedule doesn't exactly get them ready for the playoff. And so, yeah, I mean, it'll be very interesting to see how this thing shakes out. Notre Dame, by the way, at 9-2. Who do they have this weekend? It's nobody good.
Stanford
right? Yeah,
Cardinal.
Stanford at Stanford. So we'll see. At Stanford, 9:30 Central. But assuming they win at Stanford, which shouldn't be much of an issue, after they knocked off Syracuse 70-7.
Their schedule is just so they haven't played anybody.
And their 2 wins, USC and Pitt, are their 2 big wins.
Sure. Put them in a conference.
Right. I mean, Purdue is terrible. Arkansas is terrible. Boise State's having a major down year. NC State is competing towards the top of the ACC, but they're not very good. USC is a good win. That was at home. At Boston College, that's not a good win. Navy, 49-10. Even Pitt. I mean, at Pitt, you know, the team has changed. I get it, but like West Virginia beat Pitt.
Yeah.
So how good of a win is Pitt?
Right.
Then Syracuse.
Right.
I mean, just compared to BYU's resume, it's not comparable. And I mean, obviously, BYU played Stanford and beat them 27-3. So there's a comparative point there, but beyond that, there's no common opponents beyond that. And I mean, Arizona, Utah, Cincinnati. I mean, I'd put the win over Utah for BYU ahead of the USC win because Utah is higher ranked than USC is. And then, I mean, yeah, you lose to Texas Tech, but that's got to be better than losses to Miami and Texas A&M.
BYU beat Utah in a rivalry game, in a in-conference rivalry game. I think that carries more merit than beating Pitt, than beating USC. USC's a good win, cool, but and I want to make it very clear, I'm not trying to hate on Notre Dame. I'm just seeing what the term that I would use. It just looks very biased. That Notre Dame, I know their brand, they're well represented, but come on. I mean, BYU is going to play, UCF and then Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game. Notre Dame's playing Stanford. What all do we need here? What are we doing?
Yep. All right, Big 12 Radio. I think we had our time zones mixed up with Hans, so we'll have to have him join us coming up in an hour. We'll see if we could slide Chris Karpman down to the final segment of the show today in order to make it all work, because I would love to visit with Hans Olsen from the BYU Radio Network. Coming up next, we've got Shahan Jeyarajah from CBS Sports who will join us. Shahan's had a lot of great pieces written. We'll talk with Shahan about this Notre Dame BYU thing and get his context on what he thinks is the path for the Big 12 to be getting 2 bids. So still to come, Hans Olsen from the BYU Radio Network, plus Chris Karpman from Sun Devil Source. But on the way next, Shahan Jeyarajah, our buddy from CBS Sports. He joins us as we roll along here on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I'm Ari Temkin, Taman Turner producing. This is Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios.
Clear. Hey, I'm going to go use
Big 12 Radio. It's Big 12 Today, powered by Modelo, and we're super excited to be joined by our buddy Shahan Jeyarajah from CBS Sports to help us make sense of everything going on in college football right now and in the Big 12. And Shahan, you've been tweeting a lot about this, and we just talked about it, but BYU continuing to be where they are in the CFP rankings is puzzling, considering a 10-1 record and a resume that they have. And certainly in a head-to-head with two-loss Notre Dame, it makes even less sense. Try to make sense of it for us.
Yeah, I was actually just out of curiosity, like looking back at the last 5 years, and I've never seen a one-loss team this late in the year as a power conference team be ranked the way that BYU is. They're number 11 right now. And I want to be clear, right? There's two things that I think work against them. One is they got destroyed by Texas Tech. Like, the final score was 29-7. But I also think that Texas Tech, might be the second or third best team in the country, and there are other teams ahead of them that have been, rocked by other teams as well. And the other thing too is that, again, they are not one of those teams that really jump off the page from an analytic, game control, all this stuff perspective, but they just win, man. It's crazy. They're 21-3 over the past 2 years. Last year, they were the most underranked team in the field at number 17, despite having the same number of losses as a playoff team that they beat on the road in SMU. This year, of course, they're 10-1 heading into the final week of the season. And I think they're probably going to lose to Texas Tech in the Big 12 title game, because I think Texas Tech is really, really, really good. And so, again, they're in a position right now when you compare them to two-loss teams like Notre Dame. I think you could even throw Oklahoma out there, right? Oklahoma also has a loss where they got destroyed against a way worse Texas team than BYU did. They have the Alabama win and the Michigan win, but they also have an additional loss to Ole Miss. So, it's just one of those situations where you kind of look up and you're just I don't know why BYU is being treated more as a two-loss team than a one-loss. They put up the graphic yesterday on ESPN of all the two-loss teams stacked by each other, and you look up and you're like, oh, where's number 11? Why are they not included in this graphic? It's because they're not a two-loss team, but they're being treated as such.
Yeah, it's really incredible. Do you think if BYU were to beat Texas Tech in a Big 12 championship, the Texas Tech would then be out? It would not. Obviously the automatic bid would go to BYU. Do you think that would be the situation? Obviously a lot has to play out, but do you think that would be the case?
No, I think Texas Tech would be just fine. First of all, you'd be talking about dropping them 6 spots after losing that game, which would be against a team that they have already beaten in the past. I think that would be just a precedent that the committee could obviously not set, right? We saw with the Clemson SMU game last year, they were we don't want to eliminate a team based off of losing a conference championship game, because then we incentivize getting rid of conference championship games, which is not something that we want to do. So I don't think that would be on the table. The other thing too is that the committee legitimately does seem to have a lot of respect for Texas Tech. They moved them ahead of Ole Miss. Now, I think, again, they're a much better team than Ole Miss, but they did move them ahead of a number of one-loss teams as well. So I think that the committee would still very much have them in. Again, we'd kind of get into the conversation of how close are they to missing a first-round bye, or sorry, not a bye, a first-round hosting situation. I still think they'd probably be okay as long as they didn't get destroyed, but I think that the funny thing is, I actually just got off another radio interview in Houston, and they asked me an interesting question, which was, okay, let's say that BYU wins and they have to put them in the field. Well, and we're assuming Alabama loses to Georgia in the SEC title game. Well, that means that there's one spot available for all of, or for both of Alabama and Notre Dame. So do you knock Alabama out because they played in an SEC title game, which again, like I just said, is a precedent they don't want to set? Or do you have to make a decision on Notre Dame, a team that doesn't have a single win higher than, I believe it's number 17 USC at this point? I don't know what the committee would do there, to be honest, and I usually feel like I have a pretty good handle on the committee.
Well, I feel like we know what the committee will do. It's just whether or not it's reasonable enough. The committee having Notre Dame ranked ahead of BYU right now seems unreasonable, but we're willing to believe it. But I think in that case, I guess Texas Tech's on the outside looking in, and Notre Dame and Alabama get in.
But like again, just when you talk about like how the committee has viewed them to this point, like they haven't just viewed them as like good for a Big 12 team. They viewed them as a good team. I mean, they're number 5 right now. Like that is a team that the committee gives a lot of credibility to. Like really, like I truly don't think that they can realistically drop them 6 spots. Again, especially when you're talking about them compared to teams like Oklahoma, where, again, they have been very inconsistent this year. They've had a game where they've been outclassed this year. Like, I just don't. Again, I've been surprised before, and Lord knows I'll be surprised again at some point. I think that the committee thinks very highly of Texas Tech. I don't think that they'd be knocked out, but who knows?
To your point, Shahan, if they didn't ding Bama for losing to Georgia in the SEC championship, but then ding Texas Tech for losing to BYU,
right?
I mean, that's where,
yep,
like the contradictions are so blatant and obvious for the college football playoff. Like you couldn't, because you'd have 2. If you're Alabama, you'd have 2 losses to Georgia.
Yeah.
What more do you need to see? And if you're Texas Tech, it'd be 1 loss to a BYU team that you already beat.
Yeah, and on top of that, by the way, like Alabama does have the albatross of the Florida State game. Like that is still there, right? And so, I mean, I was kind of asked like, who do you think that they should leave out? Who do you think they would leave out? Like, I mean, I feel like it should be Notre Dame, right? Like Notre Dame has a lower strength of schedule than BYU. They have a lower strength of record than BYU. Now they rate higher in like the power metrics than a lot of these teams, and that's kind of what's carrying them through. But if you've got a team that you think is really good but has no resume, and you're comparing them to an Alabama team that won 4 straight games against ranked opponents, and you're comparing them to a Texas Tech team that ranks 2nd or 3rd in most of these power metrics, like I don't think that you can realistically make the case that Notre Dame deserves to be in over all these other teams. But also, the committee seems to really love Notre Dame.
Shahan, to your point, because Ari and I were just talking about Notre Dame before you came on. You mentioned how the committee respects Texas Tech. Why don't they respect BYU when you compare their resume to that of Notre Dame? BYU they beat Utah. If they're going to play in the Big 12 championship game, Notre Dame's biggest win came against what? Pittsburgh, USC. I mean, what does BYU have to do to earn the respect? If it has to rely on just winning the Big 12 championship game, going forward next year, what does a Big 12 team have to do to earn that respect?
Yeah, and I mean, I like that you brought up like kind of the over the course of years, right? Because I'm not saying it should work this way, but usually the way it works is that, hey, BYU went to 11-2 last year and was number 17 in the country. We come in with some credibility. Oh, well, this team's good. We kind of know what this team is. I think that 2 things kind of stack against them. One is, ironically, like their bowl game was against another Big 12 team. They destroyed Colorado, and I think that people were like, oh, well, that's a nice little internal Big 12 story. We don't necessarily know how it would have traveled. So, like, I don't know. If they play a mid-tier SEC team and beat them, maybe we're talking about them a little bit differently. The other thing, too, though, so, look, if Kalani Sitake, if you're listening to this right now, I know that your focus is on winning games, but clearly the committee does not prioritize that above all. You need to start putting the hammer down on these teams, especially early in the year, right? I think back to that West Virginia game where they're absolutely beating the crap out of West Virginia. It's like 21-3 after the first quarter, and Kalani Sitake's like, all right, we've made our point. Let's just manage the end of this game. And it ends up being a quote-unquote 42-28 victory. Again, anybody who watches that game knows that they beat the absolute crap out of West Virginia. But the analytics don't necessarily pick up on that, right? Because, again, the second half of that game comes into play. People just look at that final score and are like, oh, it was a 14-point win against a terrible West Virginia team. Like, I think that one of these things, too, is that I think that BYU has to be a little more cognizant of like how these analytics work. Utah, for example, is the opposite of this. They've destroyed all the mid-tier teams that they played, and they actually haven't hung against the good teams. But the committee seems to respect that more because it does give them more favorable analytic rankings. So that's one piece too, is that I think that people haven't necessarily adjusted to the fact that like BYU, with the way that they try to play games and manage games, is actually a little bit more like Iowa than Georgia, right? Like they want to just hang on and keep you underwater more than they want to put the game away. But you got to start finding ways to put games away.
Isn't there some hypocrisy there, though? Because when Notre Dame beat USC, they only won by 10 points, and they pulled away in the fourth quarter. It was a tight, close-knit game for 3 quarters. And then they beat Pittsburgh. They did beat them pretty well. But West Virginia beat Pittsburgh. So why is there a standard for BYU on how they win games but not Notre Dame?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 100% the case. And I mean, the thing is, right, like, for me, like, there is something, there's absolutely something to, being able to come out and blitz teams and win by a lot when you're talking about lesser teams, right? Like when you're talking about the mid-tier and lower tier teams on your schedule. It is a good projection tool. Now, where I run into problems is, well, we're not projecting anymore. BYU's actually won 10 games, 10 of 11 games. They've actually beaten Utah, who's better than any win on Notre Dame's schedule. And so that's where it drives me a little crazy, is when we get so far into the prediction and projection markets that we don't actually evaluate what's happening on the field, right? Because again, there's a lot. I totally understand. Like, hey, BYU's had a couple games where they had to come from behind. Obviously, that Arizona game is kind of one, although now Arizona's a ranked team, so maybe that should be reevaluated in some ways. But like, I get why that's, again, seen as a projection tool. But when a team is 10-1, and when a team is 21-3 over the course of 2 years, and when they are top 25 and top 30 in offense and defense and special teams, like, you do, I feel like, need to reevaluate at a certain point. And like you said, I mean, I think that with this committee, maybe more than almost any other, there's a level of just, hey, we think that this team is better, and we're just going to figure out a way to do this. I mean, I've kind of said heading into this week, at least, I think that the committee thinks that Utah's better than BYU. I do. I think that they're like, well, they're looking at their analytics, they're looking at their metrics, but like, obviously you cannot put Utah ahead of BYU. You cannot do it. So they just kind of pull BYU down instead because they think that Utah should be ahead of them.
All right. I want to get your thoughts, Shahan, on the hiring of Eric Morris. I mean, I love it. I mean, when you think about a guy that has been a quarterback whisperer, the influence that he's had, whether it be Cam Ward or, John Mateer, I mean, having Patrick Mahomes at Tech. I mean, this is a guy that coaches offense at the highest level and coaches quarterbacks at the highest level. Your thoughts on Eric Morris to Oklahoma State?
Yeah, I messaged him the other day and was like, man, I feel like I owe my half of my career to just like coasting off of the quarterbacks that you keep putting into college football. Because, the first time that I actually spoke to Eric Morris was when I was at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and I was at the, not great facilities, let's call it, at Incarnate Word off of his first ever season there. And I mean, he is just somebody who finds a way to create offense. The way that he is able to develop quarterbacks, the way that he's able to find playmakers in his system. I mean, look, we're in a situation right now, right, where like the air raid has been figured out in many ways, but Eric Morris just keeps finding new ways to make it better and better and better. And I think that at Oklahoma State, this is like the picture-perfect transition. You think about the way that Mike Gundy and those teams were defined early in his tenure. Great quarterbacks, great receivers, exciting offense, lots of fun, but also like an innovation that really kind of undercut everything else. And I think that he lost that piece of himself a little bit down the stretch. Well, Eric Morris, I kind of pointed out the irony, right? Like, he's 40, he's kind of sitting here in this moment, but he comes into this moment with a level of program building experience and understanding of modern college football that, again, makes you think of, like, what if Mike Gundy had this at 40, right? Like, I think that he is such a perfect fit. I think they're going to love him out there. We'll obviously see if he brings his quarterback, Drew Mestermaker, with him. We've heard that that's at least on the table. Well, they have to close the deal, but he'll have plenty of offers as well. But that would be a tremendous bit. And on top of that, their top two receivers and their top running back also, I think, would be all guys who I expect to follow Eric Morris. So it's just such a perfect fit. I think that they're going to fall in love with him. I think he's going to bring a level of offense that they haven't seen in a while to Stillwater. I mean, I was looking through the stats, and they haven't had a top half Big 12 offense since 2020. Wow. Like, Mike Gundy's Oklahoma State has not had a top half Big 12 offense since 2020. That's going to change with Eric Morris coming back in.
That is absolutely wild. Shahan Jeyarajah, CBS Sports, you're the best, buddy. Appreciate your time as always. Be well, man. Thank you. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much for having me, and happy Thanksgiving.
Shahan Jeyarajah from CBS Sports joining us to give us his thoughts on BYU and the CFP rankings and how the rest of this thing should shake out, plus his thoughts on Eric Morris. And, like the majority of us. I mean, this is a slam dunk hire for Oklahoma State, and does he bring Mestamaker with him or not? I mean, he's going to have a quality quarterback, that's for sure. I mean, just look at the outlier type seasons quarterbacks have had under him. And, obviously there's the top name guys, the John Mateers, the Cam Wards, the Patrick Mahomes, but then there's also the Chandler Rogers and the Chandler Morrises of the world that had, breakout seasons under Eric Morris. This is Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. We are presented by Modelo. On the way next, Marcus Coleman, the former Texas Tech defensive back. He joins us, former NFL defensive back, now coaching at UTRGV. Will give us his thoughts on where Texas Tech is and what to expect this weekend. That's next. This is Big 12 Radio. Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Can you hear me, Marcus? I cannot hear Marcus. Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today. Marcus Coleman, my buddy, and the former Texas Tech Red Raider defensive back, now a coach with UTRGV, joining us here on Big 12 Radio to talk through Texas Tech. And Marcus is a friend of mine going back to my days in San Antonio. What's up, Marcus? How are you? Not sure if others can hear him. I cannot hear Marcus, though.
No, we will try to get Marcus. It looks like we have an audio issue there.
Cool. All right. Well, hopefully momentarily we'll be visiting with Marcus Coleman, former NFL defensive back, former Texas Tech defensive back. Always great to catch up with alums from these universities, especially, with the season that Texas Tech is having, kind of unprecedented, especially at the defensive end, in a position in a spot that Marcus knows well, with a lot of defensive backs, or with the success of the defense this year, I should say. All right. Do we have Marcus?
I believe Marcus can hear us, but we're still working on it. We can't hear him. Looks like the audio might be off.
Got it. All right. Well, hopefully, Taman, you can help troubleshoot with Marcus Coleman and get us back on track with MC, the former defensive back for Texas Tech. And yeah, I mean, you look historically, and Texas Tech has not been littered with elite defensive teams, though they've had many elite defensive players. And, this is an elite defensive team in Texas Tech in an elite defensive season for Texas Tech with a lot of elite defensive players. And it has been, a tremendous season for them defensively. And, one more win for Texas Tech, and they clinched their first ever Big 12 championship appearance. And, I think the expectation is they go into Morgantown and get the win, but you have to go and do it. And, they've done it throughout the course of this season, really dominating the field. And so, and again, when you have a defense like Texas Tech has, I mean, it's one thing to have an elite offense, but it's another thing entirely to have, an elite defense. And defense travels. And it's one of those things where, in basketball, sometimes your offense can go cold and you miss shots. But it's another thing, when you've got a great defensive team that shows up everywhere, even when you're not, hitting shots, or even when your offense isn't in sync, which can happen from time to time. It feels like having a more elite defense is more important and more impactful week in and week out, because you're just not going to have off days on the defensive side of football in the same way that you can on the offensive side. And Texas Tech has basically been that the entire season. They've one of the top defenses in college football. They have the number one defense in terms of stop rate, which means drives that end with a turnover on downs, or a punt. So just an elite defense this year, which has been the major difference. And look, Shield Wood, with some of these openings, I don't know that we've talked a ton about Shield Wood getting mentioned for a head coaching job, but certainly if you're North Texas now looking for a new head coach, do you look at Shield Wood? North Texas, as many really good head coaches as they've had, think about Grant McCaslin on the basketball side. Seth Luttrell there for a while was rolling, and he had some opportunities to interview for bigger jobs. North Texas, in terms of being a group of five program, seems to have, resources, access to talent in a way that makes that job extremely attractive. And so, Eric Morris is on his way out, but what do they look to replace him with? And is Shield Wood a name? And not only that, but does he feel like, all right, I can go and take that job, and that can help me get to the next level? And I would certainly, we got you. There he is. What's up, Mark?
What's going on, man? Sorry about that.
No worries. How are you?
Good, man. Just kind of winding down the year, getting ready to. Well, I guess recruiting never really stops, so getting ready for mid-year guys coming in and going into the spring. So you know how that goes. It's kind of nonstop. How you doing?
I'm great, man. It's great to have you on. Marcus and I worked together at ESPN Radio in San Antonio, and I think at one point you decided, I don't know about the media thing. I'm going to give coaching an opportunity, and so that you've been doing that ever since. I think you did some arena ball coaching, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I coached some indoor ball for a little bit, and then went to in 19 really started coaching at Trinity University, which they're continuing to do well. They're back in the playoffs again this year. So Coach Herb and Coach Mahalik, they're doing a good job down there. So then I got here in 2014. So big transition, I guess, from going from D3 to D1. A little bit, not from an X's and O's perspective, but just, the administrative perspective and, how things work. And now you're dealing with the portal and NIL and rev share and all this other junk. So, but it's been fun though.
Yeah, no, right. I mean, I'm sure it's not as much around coaching football, but everything else. And you were at Trinity when Eric Morris was at Incarnate Word, yes?
Yep. Yeah. So Eric was right across the street doing this thing at UIW, and I actually texted him last night a little bit and congratulated him. So he's done a great job, wherever he's been. I think he'll do a great job at Oklahoma State. He's just one of those guys that he knows how to put it together. He knows how to win. He recruits well, especially at the quarterback position. So, I think he'll find success there.
Yeah. So, I mean, Mike, what I'm curious about is when did you first find out about Cam Ward, and what did you hear about him from a guy that was under recruited and ends up in Incarnate Word under Eric Morris to becoming the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft?
Yeah. I mean, when you're in that arena, you kind of already know about the kid. I mean, we knew about Cam Ward before everybody else knew about Cam Ward. It's just kind of one of those deals, and really, a lot of us coaches that had talked about him, it was, okay, what's the deal with this kid? Why isn't he, getting recruited? Is there something behind the scenes that we don't know about? And I mean, really nothing bad came out about him. He was just, one of those kids that got overlooked. And, when he got his opportunity, he made the best of it. And now he's a first-round draft pick. He's doing well in the NFL. So, and that happens. That's just part of the deal. Unfortunately for some players, but all those type of kids always find a way to make it through and really shine when they need to.
Marcus Coleman, who was a first-team All-American at Texas Tech in 1995, went on to play in the NFL for the Jets from 96 to 01, the Texans from 02 to 05, and the Cowboys in 06. Marcus, did you ever think Texas Tech would have a defense like this?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's got to come around at some point. I think I heard earlier you said, we had a pretty good defense, nothing on this level. We always had, good defensive players, obviously Zach, Monte Rager, guys like that. So we've had, good defensive players, but now the landscape of college football has really allowed you to, kind of build it the way that you want to. And honestly, credit to Blanche and, and Joey. It's not more so necessarily the ability of the players, but, you've got to make sure you get the right guys mentally, the same, similar attitude, same kind of work ethic, the same, guys that, will buy into the program. So the way that they've accumulated, not just the talent, but, just the mental toughness, the physical toughness, the speed that you see, week in and week out is a credit to them, because that is hard to build. That's hard to put together, particularly how fast that they've done it. So it's more about it, bringing in guys that fit the culture, but can also play at the level that you need to. And Shill's done a good job. He was good at U of H. He's, honestly done better this year than he was at U of H, to be honest with you. So they, credit to them. They've done a great job, just building that thing and putting it together.
Yeah, and you mentioned Zach Thomas there. How do you think Jacob Rodriguez compares to him?
He's up there, man. When I love Zach, I love Zach to death. Zach was very instinctive. Jacob probably has a little bit more ability than Zach. We're, being honest, but, the instincts are there. The toughness is there. He can cover, he can, stick his face in the hole if he needs to. He does everything, and Zach was, the exact same way. So, he's not far off. They're kind of 1A, 1B, you can put either one of them first, just depending on who's your favorite. But it's honestly been, really cool to see him grow up, grow into the position, grow as a player. I don't really know him personally, but just to see him grow, as a player week in and week out, and see what he does has been, it's been phenomenal to see that.
And as you're the defensive backs coach and special teams coordinator at UTRGV, are you able to watch Texas Tech at all? Are you able to watch your alma mater at all?
Actually, yeah, because most of our games are at 7:00. So a lot, everybody else is playing and usually we're waiting. So usually I get to watch, quite a few games. And I've had the chance to watch a lot of games, to be honest with you. And I like the style of play. To be honest with you, still a little worried about the QB spot, obviously because of injuries, that could really, derail this thing if it doesn't, go according to plan. But outside of that, there's not many weaknesses, on this team. Coach Perry does a great job with special teams. Like I said, offensively and defensively, they put it together. They strung out enough, they scored enough points and, held guys, to as few points as possible to get wins. And, at this point in the year, really, you just need to be able to score points. You need a defense that travels, especially going into the playoffs, and just be able to do well and kind of get your advantage, hidden yardage, things like that on special teams. And I think they can do it.
Being a San Antonio guy, Marcus, and being around Texas high school football, and what do you know about Joey McGuire? What did you know when he was coaching at Cedar Hill, and what stands out to you about Joey as a head coach?
Yeah, dude, everybody knows about Joey. First of all, you honestly have to be under a rock to not know about Coach McGuire. That's the truth. There's not a Texas high school football coach in the state that doesn't know about Coach McGuire. A great dude, honest dude, loves kids. Was very successful at the Cedar Hill. And part of that was just the way that he, organized things, got kids to buy in. Poured into young players, and he's done it throughout his career. And he continues to do that. He's just one of those guys that he's kind of like and we say the same thing about Fritz. They're not flashy or whatever it is, but wherever they go, they just win. It's just they just got the it factor. You know what I'm saying? So and Joey's one of those guys. So he understands the game. He understands how to build programs. And I think for him, like a Fritz, it's more of a culture thing that, that puts, them ahead of a lot of other coaches. So a lot of other coaches may be I'm an offensive or defensive guru, but I think at the end of the day, your culture, takes you further than the X's and O's does. And, I think that's what he does really well. So like I said, you have to be, somebody that is oblivious to football, particularly in this state, to not know about Coach McGuire.
In 1999, Marcus Coleman was second to the NFL with 6 interceptions. Also led the NFL in interceptions to the Texans in 2002. How do you teach defensive backs? As a defensive backs coach and somebody that was so successful at the position at Texas Tech and then in the NFL, like what's your approach to teaching defensive backs?
Well, you start with fundamentals. Obviously, if you're playing that position, you already have some metric of height, speed, those things. But you have to start with fundamentals. So that's footwork, hand placement, eyes, and then as you, kind of evolve into or move on to the defensive scheme. Okay, what is the scheme asking me to do? Are you a man-to-man team, or you're more of a zone team? Do you play multiple coverages? For example, like what we do here. We play. A multitude of coverages. We play 1, play 3, play 6, play quarters a different way. Sometimes the corner ends up being the safety and vice versa. So really you have to use whatever, you have to evolve, you have to teach the techniques that are needed to go along with the defense that you're in. So, but at the end of the day, you still have to start with footwork, eyes, and placement. When you're, particularly when you're playing press, you're playing off, obviously, understanding what you're seeing. If you're reading 2-1, you got 2 receivers on your side, you're reading 2-1 if you're playing cover 3. Just understanding where your number 2 receivers are and other different spots. So it really kind of depends on what you're in, what system you're in. That and the evolution of the teaching kind of goes beyond the fundamentals at that point. But really is, just good body position, footwork, hands, eyes, angles, and just understand, how to read receivers, what you're looking for different stems, where they line up, things like that. So that really gives you the advantage, as a defensive back.
Does it seem like defensive backs now need to be more versatile, multiple, in terms of playing downhill, playing in coverage?
Yeah, no doubt. Because especially here, like we ask our guys to tackle. Some places, they don't. Here you're gonna have to tackle. Depending on what you're getting, on the perimeter, you're gonna have to set the edge as a corner. So I mean, you got to be versatile, and then obviously with moving pieces around on the back end when you're trying to disguise coverages. If you try to show the same coverage, but just have different players just do the job a different way. You got to be able to play a little bit of safety, get to the post, get to the half, those kind of things. So I think the DB position is really transitioning into this. You don't really have safeties and corners anymore. You just have defensive backs because everybody needs to be, versatile. And we cross train our guys here, myself and Coach McDonald, who's a safeties coach. We cross train our guys here. So yes, we split up and we'll work on corner aspects of the position, and he'll work on the safety things. But for the most part, we stay together. We drill and do everything together.
The 1995 first-team All-American defensive back at Texas Tech, played 11 seasons in the National Football League. Marcus Coleman, now the special teams coordinator and cornerbacks coach at UTRGV Rio Grande Valley. Marcus, thanks for your time, man. Have a happy Thanksgiving and be well, brother. Take care.
No, same to you, my man. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, it was great to have you with us. We'll have to have you on again soon.
No doubt.
Hopefully talking Texas Tech in the playoffs.
I hope so, man. Yeah.
Marcus Coleman, UTRGV, joining us here on Big 12 Radio. All right, we're previewing the Territorial Cup with Chris Cartman from Sun Devil Source next. This is Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
High snap, Retzloff, he rides.
Clear.
Radio. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, joined by Chris Cartman from SunDevilSource.com to break down the Territorial Cup on Black Friday. And we talked with Justin Spears from the Tucson Star earlier, and this has got to be the biggest Territorial Cup game since they were playing for a Pac-12 South championship back in 2014, right, Chris?
No doubt about it. It's exciting. Very rarely have we seen two teams, 8 wins or more, meet up in the Territorial Cup. I think Kenny Dillingham said this is what it should be. This is what you want, even though you hate the rival team. When the game has more meaning and better significance, that brings the attention, that elevates the whole thing.
Yeah, so, I mean, this season's been sort of remarkable for Arizona State, considering the situation with health with, Levitt, Tyson, and Alford. Can you just speak to the Arizona State culture that Dillingham has built and how that has really carried them now to a 20th ranking in the College Football Playoff Committee?
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable, right? Had someone told me before the season started that Jeff Sims was going to start 5 games without Jordan Tyson in some of those games, and with Xavier Alford, ASU's all-conference safety, not playing in a Big 12 game, and Ben Coleman, their top returning offensive interior lineman, not playing for a lot of those games, I would have said just getting to a bowl would be an accomplishment. So 6 wins, 7 wins, something like that maybe, but 8 wins going into the Territorial Cup, I think that's a pretty impressive accomplishment. All things considered, still playing meaningful football, got a good chance at a very nice bowl game. Of course, a very extreme outside chance at making the Big 12 championship, but you just want to try to put yourself into the positions where you can continue to be successful. I think what Dillingham always says is you got to focus on process, not results. So how can you be the best version of yourself on that day? What can you do in that day to help your teammates and yourself and elevate what they're trying to do overall with the culture? And they've really just stayed true to that as they've gone through all these injuries and challenges.
Yeah, I mean, and Alford, like, that may be the biggest because he's been kind of the heartbeat of the defense and, a major defensive leader. So, I think, like, that one has been maybe more, I don't know if more important than Levitt, but still, to me, it's extremely underrated, the loss of Alford, because of his leadership qualities that he has for the defense.
I couldn't agree more. I haven't covered a better leader at ASU on the defensive side in 20 years. His ability to motivate, encourage, and hold his team accountable on that side is very rare. It's easy to be a rah-rah guy, but then not have the ability to also hold people into account. Or maybe you can hold people into account, but then you don't have that motivational element. He has the ability to do both somehow. He's the pregame locker room speech guy. He's the practice guy saying, hey, you need to be better than that. We're not practicing hard enough. Before Texas Tech, he was extremely involved in practices, even though he couldn't play. And I really feel like he elevated the energy of the whole group when they needed to get back on the right page. He was as important as anybody at accomplishing that. And let's not forget, he was a first-team all-conference player last year on the back end. Like, he was as good as a safety as anybody in the conference, which then gives a defensive coordinator like Brian Ward so much more confidence and freedom in the calls that you're making. So to not have him has been a big deal, and they've found a way to still hold up quite well there on the back end.
Well, and, Arizona State is 7 for 7 now in sellouts, including the sellout for the Territorial Cup, the Duel in the Desert on Friday. So, even with Jeff Sims at quarterback, who, historically has not been great, but has been really good this year, even without some of the players they've had, they have still managed to activate the Valley in that capacity. And when you look at Arizona's having a really good year. They have not filled their stadium this season to the degree that their wins, have. And maybe they're in wait-and-see mode, but just comparatively, Arizona State, despite what they haven't had, get to 8 wins and to sell out every game at home is a remarkable accomplishment for this program.
Yeah, I think Kenny Dillingham is the people's champion in the Valley. Like, this guy is so well liked and respected. The product of the school, an alumnus. He always talks about growing up in the Valley, his experiences. He just resonates in a way that's just different. And obviously, last year with their Big 12 championship success, that was building. The prior year, things had kind of not been good, and even in his first year, and it took a while for everybody to kind of get engaged, I think. And so we'll see what happens in Arizona next year with season ticket sales and what they're able to do in the community. But Dillingham is just special. He gets it. He says and does a lot of the right things. And I haven't seen somebody like that at ASU who did it in a really genuine, authentic way that was so beloved in a very long time.
Yeah, well said. We're talking here with Chris Karpman, SunDevilSource.com. Huge game on Friday. So what, just looking at this matchup this year, like what stands out to you? I mean, the Jeff Sims offense, we've seen him, run wild. We've seen him be dual threat. And then, Noah Fifita may be the most underrated player in the country. I think he's the offensive player of the year in the Big 12. Their defense has dramatically improved. They turn teams over, which, Sims historically in his career has been, his biggest issue has been turnovers. I guess, what stands out to you about this game on Friday night?
Yeah, I think Arizona's playing as well as any team in the Big 12, Texas Tech perhaps notwithstanding. Fifita, if I'm drafting quarterbacks right now, I think I might have him first in the conference. His play extension ability, his ability to make full field reads, his accuracy, he just does so many things. And I think people forget, like, he was a freshman quarterback a couple years ago and winning 10 games. And yeah, they had T-Mac, and then they went through a transition where, they had to learn a new scheme and get familiar with everything. And that took longer than I think people had anticipated. But Arizona has very good balance. They have explosive run game capability with Madi, and then on the back end, they have one of the best secondaries in the Big 12. Danny Gonzalez does an incredible job. He's been on both sides of this Territorial Cup in a pretty funny way. When he was at ASU, he was rallying for the whole Prop 200 thing, which a lot of people don't understand as the genesis of a lot of the hate and animosity that exists between ASU and Arizona. You go back to the 1950s, and Arizona leadership at the president level did not want ASU to become a full-fledged university, and they campaigned all around the state. And in fact, when then Sun Devil Stadium opened up, somebody had burned No on 200 into the grass in the very first game that ASU ever played in that stadium. And then, of course, ASU became a university. Prop 200 passed. That was a pathway to get ASU on an even playing field, so to speak, as a university with Arizona. And so Danny Gonzalez, years ago when he was ASU's DC, talked about the importance of that and how much that was a big deal and how Arizona was kind of in the wrong as a result of that. And now he's on the other side. And he's making jokes on the internet talking about there's some old AI video of him out there saying some things. So, but yeah, people don't know about that, the history of this rivalry and where the animosity comes from. And it's a lot different, and I would say more entrenched into the actual state than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, wow. All right, Chris, basketball, look, I don't know how good Wazoo is, but in Texas has historically had a lot of talent. So impressive win so far for Arizona State and Maui.
Yeah, this team is better than I think anyone expected, maybe not internally, but to go back-to-back nights, right, to play your way into the championship game today against USC, that's quite an accomplishment. Gonzaga is the only team that ASU's lost to this season, and that was a home game, and ASU didn't play particularly well, but this is about as good as you could have reasonably expected, probably better, in fact. And Mo Odom is a special type of a playmaker and point guard. I've said it for like weeks now. He's just different. He has a competitive spirit that is extremely high. He's got that New York's state of mind, and he's got some synergy with Bobby Hurley, and he's like a Bobby Hurley style playmaker, and he knows when he needs to shoot the ball, score the ball, set up teammates. Really great feel. 14 new scholarship players, but somehow it's all kind of blending and working well together, and he is the catalyst for all that.
Yeah, and Mo Odom, I mean, what has he meant? I mean, what an ad. He's been phenomenal, especially in that Texas game. My goodness, the step back three to win it was ridiculous.
Yeah, so he's like hit 10 threes, I think, in his last 2 games. And this is a guy who last season was fourth in assists in the country. So at Pepperdine, like he had really big games in the WCC last year. So I just without him, I don't know where they would be right now. You have a young big in Masamba Diop who's taken the internet by storm as far as like a future NBA prospect with his hands and his feet and his movement skills and everything that he does. But Mo Odom makes his job so much easier because he's getting the ball in all these great spots and in transition and where he's got some lobs and some sort of easy opportunities to score around the rim. And Diop's done a great job of putting himself in those situations. But without Mo Odom, I mean, it's a little bit scary where the team would be right now. He's that important, and one of the most important additions that Bobby Hurley's had in his entire coaching career. Because remember, his back is against the wall here. I mean, he's in a lame duck contract situation, his 11th year. He's got one returning player on his team who's on scholarship. He needed this infusion to work, and so far it's been going like gangbusters.
Yeah, well said. I mean, it's weird because this team feels better than last year's team, but I'm not sure that has the same talent level. I don't know. What are your kind of like? It feels like the glue guys, like this team fits more than maybe last year's team, which was sort of an amalgamation of talent.
I think it's exactly right. Like the whole is better than the parts. Like if that makes sense. And last year it was like the parts were better than the whole, and I just think that there was too much selfishness and me first attitudes last year with the team. You had some young freshmen who super talented, but they didn't understand how to blend well together with their teammates. And nobody like BJ Freeman, like even though he was like ASU's leading scorer, there was a lot of like internal discord and problems. And then he ended up leaving the team, and then he got in trouble for making some prop bets with the NCAA. So that I think was a really big emblem of how last year never really got together. And Bobby Hurley went with 7 international players, and there's something to be said about their selflessness and the way they move without the basketball and play a team-focused brand that, along with Mo Odom, has elevated this to where the whole seems better than the parts.
Yeah, well said. Chris Karpman, SunDevilSource.com. Go check out the great work Chris and his team do at Sun Devil Source. Appreciate your time, Chris. Have a happy Thanksgiving, brother.
No doubt, Ari. Same to you.
Take care. All right, there is Chris Karpman joining us here. It's Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, exclusively on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. We are presented by Modelo here, and we are so pleased to be joined right now by the former BYU Cougar and now with BYU Radio and a KSL Sports Zone, Hans Olsen, joining us here on Big 12 Radio. What's going on, Hans? How are you?
I don't like you making fun of my email, Ari. I send my email to Ari, and he says, "Oh, what a great email." And he goes, "At least I'll remember how to say your name." Let's just say that in my email, there's a Hans and a pants. That's all I'm going to give out there. But great to be with you, Ari. I love being on this show. I always love talking to you. Love being a part of this conference. It's just been one of the best parts of my life.
Yeah, and look, I feel the same way about you. There are a few people that analyze the sport and make it sound as simple as you do. That's a gift. And so I love hearing you talk about BYU and Utah and everything you talk about in the KSL Sports Zone. And it's a pleasure to have you join us. And look, I want to echo the sentiment about BYU. BYU has been as big of an addition to the Big 12 as the Big 12 has meant to BYU. And I know the Big 12 has meant a ton to BYU. But, 21 of 24. They have won 21 of their last 24 football games. It is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. And, I was going through this, Ari, in almost 3 full years in the Big 12. Kalani Sitake has beat 13 of his 15 Big 12 opponents. And I remember, because I was part of the broadcast on year 1 in the Big 12, and I remember their first win over a Big 12 team and thinking, geez, that was tough. Holy cow, this is going to be tough. And here we are just 3 years down the line, 13 of 15. The only ones he hasn't beat in conference play is Arizona State and Kansas. So he's just done an amazing job at BYU.
Truly. And look, we've spent a ton of the show today talking about just the absurdity of where BYU is in the eyes of the College Football Playoff Committee. I mean, blind resumes just comparatively to the teams in front of them. It's a joke. Especially Notre Dame. And look, I know as you've been around this program as long as you have, this is not new to BYU fans. It feels like this is just history constantly downplaying BYU. And even now, in a legit conference, in a power conference, it's still happening.
Still happening. And it's shocking. And it ticks me off. I'm actually mad about it. And I watch this team week in and week out. Look, they've surpassed my expectations. So, Ari, I understand why the committee didn't have him in the top 25, a true freshman quarterback. I understand it. But then they break into the top 25, whatever it was, week 3. They start to work up the board. They go 8-0, big-time road wins. And I just see them continue to fight. And I watch them over the last 2 games, how they responded to Texas Tech. They get a dominant win over TCU. Dominant, 44 points. And then they get a nice road win over Cincinnati. Really tough team. If people don't think that TCU and Cincinnati are dangerous, good teams, then you're not paying attention. Those are 2 very good teams. And I watch this team, and I call these games, and I'm like, oh, man, this defense is elite. Oh, this run game is elite. Oh, this offensive line is extremely well coached. Oh, this true freshman actually manages extremely well. And I keep thinking, yeah, I've got them in the top 10. In my mind, I've got them somewhere 8, 9, or 10, but they're in the top 10. And Ari, to your point with Notre Dame, well, I go to this. Notre Dame, Alabama, Oklahoma, all of them played 4 road games. They've played 4 road games. 4. BYU's played 6. And you think about those 6 road games, you go and get a tough win in Ames, Iowa. That's a hard road trip. You go get a tough win in a very tough Arizona environment that is, very tough to go in and get a victory in. You go in and you get a win against Cincinnati. Again, another long road trip. Okay, well, let's talk about road trips. You go all the way to East Carolina and you take care of a Panthers team that still, if they win this weekend, they're still up there, 8 wins? 8 wins, I think, on the season. So it's like tough road game after tough road game, and I've watched them come back from 14 points, come back from 10 points. I've watched them dominate from the opening snap. I've watched them put game plans together to stop high-octane offenses. I watched Utah, who everybody loves. I know they dropped a spot. They dropped below Miami for some inexplicable reason. And I watched BYU put together a game plan and get a win over a Utah team that if they beat BYU, they would certainly be in the top 10. So I'm ticked about it, to be honest, Ari. It bothers me.
Yeah, same here. I mean, it's inexplicable. And again, like if Notre Dame had the same schedule as BYU, Notre Dame would still be a top 10 team and maybe even higher because they'd only have one loss. We need to point it out because it's so blatantly, a brandism. And, it's like, what does BYU have to do to be thought of in that echelon? Again, like, the history is there. You've got Heisman Trophy winner, national championship. You've won 21 of 24. And you're doing this all with a true freshman quarterback who spent spring football in Palo Alto, California. Like,
that's right.
Insane.
That's exactly right. Yeah. It's insane and it's sad, and I feel like they just continue to hold it against BYU. They continue to hold it against Kalani, and I'm trying to think. Okay, at this point, what is it that's keeping them outside the top 10? What is it that's keeping them outside of some of those perceived brackets that are put together? Because they're the first one out. They're the first one out last week. They're the first one out this week. And it's like, okay, it was only a really good, convincing win on the road against Cincinnati. So, okay, I understand why you would keep a Notre Dame team that started the season 0-2. Now, losses against Miami and Texas A&M, but they started the season 0-2. Yeah, they don't have a road win that it really stands apart. But what you look at the road wins against Iowa State, Cincinnati, Arizona, you look at those 3 road wins just right there, and you've got yourself an extremely impressive resume. And what the other thing is, all the compilations, everything was strength of schedule, strength of road schedule, all of these scheduling, it's showing how high they're ranked. So tell me, why? Give me an explanation. What is it? And what bugs me, Ari, is I know that this just puts the committee in a room hoping that BYU fails. That's exactly what they're doing. They just hope BYU fails so that they can say to the entire Cougar Nation, told you, you suck. We knew it. You figured it out. It's just we knew it before you knew it. And now it's got me pushed into a corner. I feel like a caged dog. And I'm hoping this team feels like a caged dog being hit with a cattle prod because everybody doubts them. And that ticks me off because it's a really good team. It's a complete team.
Yeah, well said. One of the things, like going into this season, I wasn't very high on BYU because, I thought, all right, are they going to have as many turnovers? That tends to be a stat that evens out year over year. They were so opportunistic at scoring, non-offensive touchdowns, whether it was Parker Kingston returning, punt returns for touchdowns last year, or the defense with pick sixes. I guess I underestimated how good of a defensive coordinator Jay Hill is. That, the turnover piece is translatable year over year. What stands out to you about why this team has been so good these last 2 years, and what maybe some of the people like me that analyze this stuff missed about this year's team?
Okay, all great points, and you brought up one of them, and that's Jay Hill. So I can tell you've done your homework, Ari, because Jay has been the catalyst for the turnaround. He's brought in a lot of this talent. Like, for instance, Jack Kelly comes from Weber State. The corners that he's brought in over the last couple of years, Weber State talent, guys that he recruited and developed that have been fantastic. So Jay Hill has been exceptional. Aaron Roderick on the other side, putting together a game plan for a true freshman quarterback in Bear Bachmeier, the way he's done it, different max protections, different run games, run styles, keeping Bear engaged in the run game, but giving him opportunity off play action look and RPO style. Like, he's built game plans that keeps him upright, keeps him safe, but also gives him time to gamble. And it's been incredible just watching him week to week put it together. Texas Tech obviously didn't work, Ari. Okay, I get it. And the committee obviously is looking at giving up 29 points to a top 5 team in the country is, oh, well, that's it, man. Just put them on the dead pile. But they'll figure out something else. They'll come out with something better. I think both offensively and defensively, if they get back to that championship game against Texas Tech. But I'm going to go to this, all right, just to kind of put a cherry on the top of all this. If people understand what Kalani Sitake did over the last couple of years, We'll just say over the last 3 years. I've watched Kalani Sitake as a head coach fire, well, I use that very loosely, but move on from Ty Detmer, who is BYU's Heisman Trophy winner. That was his offensive coordinator start his tenure at BYU. I watched him 3 years ago move on from two of his best friends, defensive coordinator Elisa Tuiaki and assistant head coach Ed Lamb, bringing in Jay Hill. Okay, I'll go back 2 years ago. He moves on from his offensive line coach, Coach Funk, and he brings in TJ Woods because he didn't feel like his offensive line was getting the job done. So he moved on from an offensive line coach that he loved and adored to bring in TJ Woods, and he's turned the tide. So this is what I think, Ari. Kalani Sitake under Kyle Whittingham learned that you only keep your job as a head coach when you've got good assistants. And if you got to move on from assistants, then you move on from assistants and you make sure you're giving Cougar Nation or you're giving your team the best assistants and the best chance to win. And Kalani Sitake continues to cut, fire, adapt, and adjust to keep BYU relevant. And I really do think that he is the dog that wags this hotel.
Well said.
Hans, question for you. One of the committee came out and said that they were talking about BYU and style points. Kalani Sitake responded basically by saying he's not worried about style points. He's focused on wins. Should he have a focus on style points, or is that just not fair criticism?
Okay, so I know you think it, Tam, and I think it. I know Ari thinks. I know we all think. You got to put style points on. Utah's doing it. You see the 50-plus points that they're putting up. They're putting on those style points. It's just not Kalani Sitake's nature. He wanted L.J. Martin to kneel at the 1 yard line when he broke free against Cincinnati at the end of that game. He said it to me in the post game, and by the way, I know he's honest about it. He does not like to pile on. He does not like to inflict. He likes to win games. He likes good camaraderie. He likes being compassionate. And by the way, he is compassionate. He and I were seniors together at BYU. We were there for 3 years together. We graduated together. I've known him since about 1997 when he returned from his mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I've known him for a lot of years. He's very compassionate. He's got a huge heart. But, I just don't think it's in his DNA. I don't think it's in his DNA. He would rather just say, let's get the wins. We don't need style points because we're just going to beat Texas Tech. We'll just take care of it that way. We don't need style points because when we get in the first round, now we control our own destiny. To me, come on, man. Well, it's obvious. The committee wants style points. Utah was all the way up at number 12, and they had lost to BYU and they'd lost to Texas Tech. It wasn't being held against them because they'd strung together 3 or 4 games where they're 45 points plus and beating teams by 30. So it does make a difference. It's just not in Kalani's DNA.
Yeah, and he's a dude that's true to himself, and that cuts both ways, right? I mean, that's what makes him as great as he is, and in this case, it makes him stay true to himself in a way that's maybe detrimental to the program. But I mean, that's who he is through and through, and you have to admire somebody like that.
Yep, I always have. He was our team captain when I was a senior, and I was the goofball, and we were close friends, and he dealt with all my idiocies, and he's put up with all of my idiocies over the years here in the state of Utah as he's coached through Utah, and he started out in Southern Utah. He's been here forever, and it's just been kind of funny. We've had a nice back and forth on air to coach for the last 20 years.
All right, before we let you go, this tweet you had, which controller do you have the best memories with? This is a great picture. So it's basically video game controllers from the PlayStation 5 all the way back, number 1, to the Atari joystick. And I'll have to agree with you here. You took Nintendo 64 controller, number 6 on this list, as like the one that I have the best memories with. I do too. It's the first joystick one. I think of GoldenEye. I think of like NHL PA, playing the old NHL games, or Wayne Gretzky hockey on N64. So I'm with you on that.
Blitz.
NFL Blitz. Oh, man, yeah.
007 and Blitz, man. And we spent hours and hours. I'll tell you a really quick story.
Suicide Blitz all day.
I'm going to tell you a really quick story. So I just got married, 1999. I just got married, and I just got a Nintendo 64, and I'd have all my teammates come over, and we had this little duplex that we rented, and all my teammates came over. It was like 8:30 in the morning, and my wife was leaving for work. I was just playing football. She was working to try to sustain life. So she's walking out the door. She said, "Okay, bye, guys." There's like 8 or 9 of us. "Bye, guys. Hey, honey, will you just do the dishes before I get home?" She comes home. I'm not kidding, Ari. She comes home at 6 p.m. All of us are still sitting in front of the TV with that stupid Nintendo 64 playing Blitz. She walks in and there's more dishes in the sink. And she's like, I just didn't understand what marriage was, bro. I didn't understand. I didn't know that you're supposed to do what they ask you to do. And I'm like, hey, come give me a hug. She's like, a hug? I'm not giving you a hug. Where's the dishes? Why are they? Yeah, it was crazy, man. And all my buddies stood up. All my teammates stood up and slowly walked outside the door. They felt the awkwardness. But, man, I miss those days. I love that Nintendo 64, man.
That was a game changer, 100%. It's NFL Blitz and GoldenEye. I mean, that was amazing. Hans Olsen, have a great Thanksgiving, brother. Have a great call on Saturday, and hopefully we'll have you on again next week to talk about a Big 12 championship game.
Hey, I'll come on every day with you boys. Anytime you need me, I'm here for you.
You're the best. Thank you.
All right, see you guys.
Take care. Hans Olsen from, of course, KSL Sports Zone and the BYU Radio Network joining us here, breaking down BYU, UCF, and, of course, the College Football Playoff Committee's egregious ranking of BYU. All right. This has been a fun show, full of interviews with all of the biggest stories around the Big 12. Thanks to Taman Turner, our producer, for producing today's show. Thanks to Anthony Smith with Big 12 Studios for producing. I am Ari Temkin. Have a great and happy Thanksgiving. We're back on Monday with not hopefully, the Big 12 championship game will be set on Monday. We're reacting to it. But for now, we're out. Peace.